The wind never stopped blowing on the sky islands. Soft, ceaseless, whispering winds that carried the scent of clouds and distant mana. For as long as Aoi Takahashi could remember, they had been the sound of his life, fluttering laundry on rooftop lines, brushing through thin curtains at dawn, sighing against rusted railings when the world felt heavy. That morning they were different, colder, sharper, almost aware. Aoi stood at the edge of the school rooftop, hands resting on the chipped guardrail, eyes half-lidded against the rising sun. From up here, he could see the neighboring islands drifting lazily past, each carrying buildings, towers, forests, small worlds unto themselves. They hovered over an endless sea of blue mist that never cleared. No one had ever seen what lay beneath it. He exhaled slowly, letting the chilled air sting his lungs. 4 months. That was all the time he had. 4 months until the university entrance trials. 4 months to master powers that most people trained years to control. Aoi. He turned slightly. Rika's voice was unmistakable, sharp but warm, like fire cracking through silence. She stood at the stairwell door, red scarf flapping behind her, one hand on her hip like she owned the wind. "You're doing that rooftop brooding thing again," she said, walking toward him. "You know people are starting to think you're secretly in a drama." Aoi didn't smile, but the corner of his mouth twitched. "Maybe I am." Plot twist. Main character awakens a ridiculous power and then spends every day wondering how to survive it. Rika snorted. "Sounds like a cheap web novel. Besides, if anyone's ridiculous, it's you. Have you even told the teachers yet?" "No," Aoi said quietly. "And I'm not going to. Not yet." Rika frowned, stepping closer. "It's been 3 weeks since your awakening. You've been skipping ability guidance sessions. That's going to get flagged." "I know." "Then why?" "Because I don't trust them," Aoi said. "Not with this." He raised his hand. Nothing happened at first. Then, with a faint shimmer, a slender blade appeared above his palm, floating, gleaming, silent. It wasn't forged from metal but condensed mana, shaped into a weapon by sheer will. The blade hovered, rotated, then split into 2, then 4. Each floated effortlessly in the air, like petals caught in a breeze. Rika's breath caught. "Still gives me goosebumps. I can feel them. All the time," Aoi murmured. "Even when I sleep. They hum in my head. They grow stronger. On their own." Rika looked at him for a long moment. "You're scared." Aoi didn't answer. He was scared. Not of the power itself, but of what it meant. Powers were supposed to be loud. Physical. Elemental. Everyone had a core attribute. Flame, wind, ice, lightning. Even rare types like illusion or summoning had clear laws. But this wasn't like anything he'd read in manuals or seen in training broadcasts. Mind-controlled swords that could fly, fight, and learn. A skill system that trained itself even when he did nothing. And a strange, pulsing feeling in his chest like something vast was waiting to wake up. "You need help," Rika said finally, softer now. "Real help. Not just sneaking off to train alone." "I know someone," Aoi said. "Someone who used to be a Skydome graduate. Retired now, lives at the edge of the island. They might be able to teach me." Rika raised an eyebrow. "Might?" Aoi shrugged. "I haven't asked yet." "Of course you haven't," she muttered. "You're the same Aoi as always. Carrying the world alone and thinking no one notices." He looked at her, surprised. She met his gaze without flinching. "You think no one sees it, but your eyes get tired. You come to school like a shadow. And you never ask for help. Not even from me." "I didn't want to drag you into it," he said quietly. "Too late," Rika said, brushing past him to the edge of the roof. "If your swords go crazy and slice the school in half, I'm probably already toast. So you might as well let me help before that happens." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. There was no point arguing with Rika once she made up her mind. She was a fire mage, stubborn by nature, always moving forward. The kind of person who didn't flinch even when the wind changed. The rooftop bell chimed faintly in the background. First period. Aoi watched the sky a moment longer. The wind really had changed. And somewhere deep in his chest, where the core of his new power pulsed like a second heartbeat, something responded. Like the quiet click of a lock being undone. Something had begun. That afternoon after school, Aoi didn't go home. Instead, he followed a narrow path along the edge of the island, through overgrown fences and forgotten gardens, toward the outskirts where only windmills and silence remained. A faint memory guided his feet, a rumor about an old adventurer who lived alone, away from the city lights. He found the house at the very edge, perched like it was waiting to fall into the clouds. Wooden steps creaked under his weight. He hesitated, then knocked. Nothing. He knocked again. A second passed. Then another. Just as he turned to leave. Back door, a gravelly voice said from above. Use the back. I don't open the front for anyone with smooth hands. Aoi blinked. Well, that was unexpected. He circled around, pushed open the gate and stepped into the back garden. What he saw made him stop in his tracks. Swords. Hundreds of them. Stuck into the ground like grave markers. All different shapes, sizes, materials, some cracked with age, others still gleaming. They surrounded the house like a silent army. And in the middle of them all, sitting on a worn stool, was a man with a long coat, gray hair tied back, and a single eye glinting under a metal band across his forehead. You the kid with the floating swords? He asked without looking up. Aoi nodded. Yes. You want to learn how to control them? Yes. The man scratched his chin. And why should I teach you? Aoi thought of his family. Of the cracked roof they couldn't afford to fix. Of his little brother pretending not to notice their parents skipping dinner. Of Rika standing in the wind not letting him fall. And of the weight in his chest, the thing that told him this power was only beginning. Because if I don't learn, Aoi said quietly, I'll never be strong enough to change anything. There was silence. Then the man stood. Well, he said, cracking his neck. That's better than most. He held out a weathered hand. Name's Yanagi. I'll train you. The wind was cruel today. It rushed across the old training field behind Yunagi's home, carrying flecks of dust and bits of dry grass. The sky above was clear, too clear. The kind of brightness that made shadows feel harsh. Aoi stood still, sweat soaking through his shirt, for floating swords circling him slowly. They trembled. Not from fear, but from his lack of control. Again, Yanagi said, seated under the shade of a crumbling archway. This time make the blades move as one. Your mind is the string that holds them. Pull too hard they snap. Too loose they fall. Aoi clenched his teeth. He raised his hand, focusing. The swords responded sluggishly, forming a square pattern in the air. They hovered with jagged, uneven timing, like unsure dancers waiting for the beat. Then he tried to shift them. One moved faster than the others. Another drifted slightly to the left. A third rotated too wide, and the last veered off completely, slicing through a wooden post 20 meters away before vanishing into thin air. Aoi gasped, falling to one knee. A piercing headache flared behind his eyes. The remaining swords blinked out of existence. Tish, Yanagi muttered. Your mind's too noisy. You're trying to command them like soldiers. But your swords aren't soldiers. He stood, walking toward Aoi with slow, heavy steps. They're parts of you. Extensions of your thought. Not tools. Not toys. Every flicker of doubt, every breath of hesitation, they feel it. Aoi stayed quiet, breathing hard. His skull throbbed with strain. Behind his eyelids, he could still feel the pull of the swords like phantom limbs, distant, disjointed. I don't understand, he said finally, hoarse. Why can't I just train them the normal way? Let them level up passively. That's what the auto core does. Because you'll stagnate, Yanagi said. Auto training is a gift, but it's like a river with no banks. Without discipline it floods. Your power needs intention. You have to show it where to go. Aoi looked up. So it's not enough to let it grow. I have to guide it. Exactly. Yanagi crouched beside him, voice quieter now. You're not like other awakened. You don't have flashy spells or elements. You don't throw fire or summon beasts. You become the weapon. You are the sword. Aoi's chest tightened. It was overwhelming. Every time he touched his power, it felt like reaching into something too vast, like dipping his hand into the sky itself and trying to hold it still. He stood slowly, legs shaking. I'll try again. No, Yanagi said. Aoi blinked. What? Break's over. Time for the real lesson. Before Aoi could react, Yanagi raised a hand, and with a pulse of mana, a steel training sword flew from the ground into his grip. Draw your swords, he said. I'm not ready. Neither are dungeons. Neither are monsters. Neither is life. Yanagi didn't shout. He didn't raise his voice. But the weight behind his words hit harder than a blow. Aoi took a slow breath. The headache was still there. His body ached. But he raised his hand again. 4 swords shimmered into existence, slightly unsteady but present. Good, Yanagi said. Then he attacked. His movement was blinding, no warning, no mercy. A swing aimed straight for Aoi's shoulder. Aoi flinched back, barely redirecting one sword in time to deflect the strike. The shock echoed through his arm like a lightning bolt. He didn't have time to think. Unagi stepped forward, low and fast, thrusting again. Aoi sent 2 swords forward to intercept, but they collided awkwardly out of sync. One skidded off the flat of the blade, the other spun out, disrupted by his poor focus. The third strike came faster than his reaction. Pain bloomed across his ribs as the flat of the training sword struck hard. Aoi hit the ground with a dull grunt. His vision spun. The swords blinked out again. Unagi stood over him, silent. Not gloating. Not scolding. Just waiting. Aoi gritted his teeth and forced himself up. His side burned. His head pounded. But something deeper ached more. His pride. His helplessness. The memory of his brother trying to study by flashlight because the power crystal had run out. His mother coughing quietly at night to hide it. His father apologizing for dinner being small again. He couldn't be weak. Not when so much rested on him. He opened his hand again. This time, 5 swords appeared. Unagi raised an eyebrow. Pushing your limit already? Aoi didn't answer. He stepped forward, slow, steady, and sent 2 swords to flank, 1 to hover behind, 2 front-facing. It wasn't perfect, but it was better. Unagi came at him again. They clashed. And this time, Aoi held his ground. Barely. He lasted 20 seconds before being knocked flat again. Then 40. Then a full minute. By sunset he could barely stand. But when Unagi finally lowered his sword, there was a glint of something rare in the old adventurer's eye. Approval. Good, he said. Tomorrow we go again. Aoi lay on the grass long after the sky turned violet. His swords were gone. His body ached in places he didn't know existed. But deep inside he felt something small and steady, like the turning of a quiet gear. His auto-training core had recorded every second. Every movement. Every mistake. Every moment of adaptation. The next time he summoned those swords, they'd remember. They'd adjust. They'd be sharper. He smiled faintly to himself. It wasn't a power he could brute force. It was something he had to grow with, slowly, deliberately, like sharpening a blade with every breath. The city of Kesharim shimmered like a jewel on the edge of the sky. It wasn't large, just one of many floating island settlements scattered across the upper strata of the blue planet, but it pulsed with quiet tension this week. Posters lined the school halls. Emails buzzed with notices. The Dungeon Foundation had opened a new Tier 1 rift for student trials. Aoi stood at the station platform, hands deep in his coat pockets, as a stream of Skyrail cars drifted past like glowing serpents through the air. He'd been accepted for his first licensed dungeon dive. It wasn't much. Just a low-tier dungeon field with minimal risk, sanctioned for combat apprentices and university hopefuls. But for Aoi, it was everything. A battlefield, a classroom, a proving ground. And, according to Professor Unagi, a test of whether you can think with a blade to your throat. The Skyrail hissed to a stop. He stepped inside, sat by the window, and let the soft hum of mana crystals carry him to the trial site. The dungeon's exterior looked unimpressive, just a crater surrounded by moss-covered ruins and quiet stone pillars. But the mana leaking from the ground shimmered with that unmistakable coldness, depth. It didn't take long for the rest of his assigned trial team to arrive. 2 students from another school. A girl who could create barriers. A bulky guy with an iron gauntlet fist. And her. She didn't say her name at first. Just nodded, adjusted her hood, and tapped a glowing map crystal that floated beside her like a will-o'-the-wisp. She wore black leather armor over a gray tunic, her half-elf ears just barely visible through choppy silver hair. Her eyes, a pale lilac, scanned the dungeon gate like it had insulted her. The instructor read off the names. Takashi Aoi, sword mental type. Aoi gave a small nod. Luna Noir, rogue class, navigator specialty. So that was her name. Luna. She didn't react. The group stepped into the dungeon as one. Mist swirled. The light dimmed. The air shifted, cool, damp, and heavy with pressure. The first 30 minutes were simple. A basic corridor layout. Low-threat goblin scouts. Aoi stayed back, letting the others take point. His floating swords hovered around him like silent hawks, occasionally lashing out with practiced precision. He wasn't flashy, but he was precise. His control had improved. Still flawed. Still draining. But his strikes no longer wobbled. The auto-training core had refined them overnight, subtly but surely. It was Luna who first took real notice. "You're quiet," she muttered as they paused in a safe room. Aoi shrugged. "I don't like wasting movement." She tapped her map crystal again. "Your sword trajectory just avoided a pressure tile trap. Intentional?" He looked up, slightly surprised. "No. Instinct, I think." She studied him, expression unreadable. You might survive longer than I thought. Thanks. I think. She didn't smile. But her gaze softened just a little. Trouble came 2 chambers later. The group entered a wide hall with high pillars and cracked stone tiles. Nothing moved at first. The barrier girl stepped forward, just 2 paces, when the floor shifted. A shriek echoed. A sudden blur of movement. Then chaos. Dungeon hounds, 3 of them, burst from hidden crevices, fangs like obsidian, tails dripping acid. They weren't supposed to spawn here. Not in a student zone. Type B breach, someone shouted. Fall back. The gauntlet boy charged forward on instinct, yelling. Too slow. One of the hounds leapt over him and barreled toward the barrier girl. Aoi's eyes widened. Think fast. He raised his hand. 4 swords shimmered into place. He didn't shout a command. He simply thought, and the swords launched like silent arrows. 2 blades intercepted the lunging hound mid-air, striking across its shoulders. Another swept low, carving a shallow arc into its back leg. The 4th hovered behind Aoi, humming gently. The beast twisted, wounded but enraged. Then Luna moved. Fast. She dropped from the ledge above. When had she even gotten up there? And landed behind the distracted hound, twin daggers flashing. A precise strike to the base of its spine. It crumpled. The other 2 hounds circled warily now, sensing coordination. Back to back, Luna barked. Cover high. You float, I finish. Aoi didn't question it. He adjusted his stance. His sword circled overhead, shielding their position. Luna danced below the blades, quick, fluid, lethal. Together they made a strange rhythm. Metal and shadow. Mind and instinct. In less than a minute it was over. The chamber fell quiet. The hounds vanished into vapor. The instructor emerged moments later, scowling. That was an error. The gate shuffled. You shouldn't have had to deal with that level yet. We'll be filing a report. Luna was already checking her map crystal again. We're fine. Aoi glanced at her. You okay? She didn't look at him. You didn't freeze. That's rare. You didn't either. Now she did look at him. You think I'm new to this? Pause. Then just barely she smiled. Later, after the mission debrief and team dismissals, Aoi lingered near the transport platform. The sky was burning orange, casting shadows long across the city. Luna stood nearby, arms crossed, watching the clouds shift. Your swords, they're not just mana constructs, she said suddenly. They feel aware. Aoi hesitated. They're getting stronger on their own. Even when I sleep. It's part of something called the auto core. She was quiet for a moment. That kind of growth is dangerous. I know. People will want it. I know that too. She turned to him. Then you'd better learn how to hide it. He nodded. Then, to his surprise, she reached into her satchel and tossed him something. A tiny carved charm. Shaped like a compass needle. What's this? A map token, she said. It lets you ping someone on your field map in a dungeon. Only works if they accept it. You're giving me a tracker? I'm giving you an ally. She turned away before he could respond. I map places most people don't come back from, she said, walking into the dusk. You keep sharpening those blades. You'll need them. The arena beneath Keshram High was built into the roots of the island itself. Not flashy. Not colossal. Just a circular chamber of stone and mana-woven glass, echoing faintly with each footstep. The air here felt heavier than outside, compressed by wards that ensured safety while amplifying magic. Aoi stood on the eastern platform, breathing slowly, one hand raised. Across from him, Rika tightened her scarf. Her flame glyphs had already begun to glow faintly along her arms. It wasn't a real fight. Just a training match. Supervised. Friendly. The kind students signed up for to earn extra points. But still, there was something in the air between them. Something that had been quietly building ever since Aoi started disappearing after school. Ever since he stopped talking about his training. About her. You're not holding back, are you? Rika asked, voice clear. Aoi shook his head. You'd be insulted if I did. You're right. The signal crystal pulsed green. The duel began. Rika moved first. Not recklessly. Not explosively. Just fast, smooth, controlled, with the confidence of someone who knew her element like breath itself. Her footwork slid across the mana-lined floor like she was skating on heat. Fire danced at her fingertips, blooming into 3 flickering orbs that hovered beside her. Flame song style, Ember Waltz. Aoi didn't move. He raised his hand. 4 swords shimmered into the air around him, humming softly. Then, with a thought, he launched one straight forward, probing. Rika sidestepped, fluid as ever, and flicked one of her fire orbs in response. It collided midair with the sword, bursting into smoke. The crowd murmured. Students watched from the upper railings, leaning forward with wide eyes. They weren't used to seeing Aoi fight. Not like this. Rika pressed forward. Her hands moved like a conductor's baton, weaving strands of fire into a spiraling whip. She lashed out, a precise strike aimed at Aoi's flank. He barely shifted his posture. Two swords intercepted, forming a floating cross that absorbed the blow. Sparks flew. Rika pivoted. You've gotten faster. You haven't slowed down. They moved again. Aoi stayed defensive, letting his blades dance in slow arcs around him. It was like watching a silent storm form, each sword floating in calculated rhythm, each movement deliberately economical. Rika, by contrast, burned bright. She ducked low, spun, ignited the floor beneath him. Fire shot up in a geyser of orange. He leapt back, sent one sword down like a needle, piercing through the flame just enough to split the burst and step through unscathed. Their eyes met. And for a moment the air around them shimmered, not just from heat but tension. You're still not saying anything, Rika said, circling. There's nothing to say. There's everything to say, she snapped. You disappeared. You stopped asking me to train with you. You act like you're walking this path alone. Aoi hesitated. 3 swords floated beside him. One glowed slightly red, heat echo from Rika's last strike. I didn't mean to shut you out. You didn't have to shut me out, she said. Then she charged. No more holding back. Her hands moved in a blur, 6 fire sigils spinning into place, wrapping her in a spiral of flame. It wasn't just a technique. It was her own style. Improvised. Evolved. Aoi responded instinctively. His swords split formation, 2 above, 2 circling, 1 streaking forward like a comet. They met in the center of the ring. Blades clashed with flame. Each strike was less about brute force and more about intention. Rika's fire surged with emotion, resentment, frustration, worry. Aoi's swords moved with restraint, carefully measured, deliberately held back. Not out of disrespect, but fear. Not of her, but of what his own power might do if he lost control. It was Rika who finally called it. Stop. The fire around her fizzled. Not out of defeat, but out of tired sadness. You're still holding back, she said, breathless. Aoi lowered his hand. His swords vanished. I didn't want to hurt you. Then you should have trusted me, she said quietly. You don't have to fight alone, Aoi. You never did. The referee announced a draw. Neither of them reacted. Later, after the arena lights dimmed and the other students had gone, Aoi sat alone in the locker bay, staring at the dull steel of a manuscarred sword. His thoughts weren't racing. They were just heavy. The auto core had already started adjusting to today's battle. He could feel it, small shifts in mana flow, tiny optimizations to movement angles. But it didn't tell him how to fix what he'd broken with Rika. Unagi had told him swords were extensions of the self. If that was true, then what kind of person had he become? He didn't notice the footsteps until she sat down beside him. Rika didn't say anything at first. She just offered a small crystal bottle. Chilled herb water. Good for muscle recovery. He took it wordlessly. After a while she sighed. When we were kids, you always stood in front of me, she said. Even when you were scared. Even when you didn't know what you were doing. I remember. But now, it feels like you're building walls I can't break. Aoi looked down at the bottle. Then finally he spoke. Let me learn to stand beside you instead. She didn't respond right away. Then, quietly, she leaned her head against his shoulder. Better, she whispered. The wind in the sword field didn't whistle today. Rang. Each breeze carried a hum, subtle, metallic, as it passed between the blades planted into the earth. Hundreds of swords stood silently in Unagi's garden, some cracked and rusted, others gleaming faintly under the silver light of early morning. It was said they were all once used in real battles. Now they rested like ghosts. Aoi stood at the center of them, barefoot on cold stone, eyes closed. He didn't summon his swords today. He listened. Unagi sat nearby on a crooked bench, sipping bitter tea from a chipped cup. You hear them yet? The old man asked. Aoi opened his eyes. Not clearly. Just resonance. Like echoes. Good. You're not supposed to hear words. Swords don't talk in sentences. They speak in pressure. In weight. In will. He tapped a cane against the ground, and a nearby sword vibrated softly in response. This garden is where I forged my last sword. Not in a forge. not with fire. But here, among the dead steel. Aoi glanced around. These are all yours? Unagi nodded once. Each one broke during my life. Some in war. Some in failure. Some in lessons I was too proud to learn the first time. He looked at Aoi then, and his single eye seemed to pierce straight through the young man's thoughts. You've reached the point where training isn't enough. You need a sword that knows you. One that grows with you. Aoi frowned. But I already have my flying swords. Those are good, Unagi said. But they're not yours yet. They're mass conjures, fragments of your power, yes, but not forged through your will. Not personalized. Not bonded. He stood. The next step is naming one. Aoi blinked. Naming? Unagi gestured. From beneath the bench, he drew a small leather pouch and tossed it toward Aoi. Inside was a rough, glowing shard, jagged like crystallized wind, thrumming faintly with potential. Refined core stone, Unagi said. Took me 3 favors and a barrel of patience to get it. Don't waste it. Aoi turned it over in his hand. It felt alive. As though it had already seen the battlefield even though it had never been shaped. You'll need a forge, Unagi said, motioning him toward the rear of the property. A squat stone forge sat beneath a broken dome. The coals were dead. The tools scattered. Dust clung to the corners like a warning. But Aoi didn't hesitate. He set to work. The first hour was clumsy. The forge didn't respond to regular flame. Mana wouldn't sink into the core stone until Aoi aligned his breathing perfectly. Even then, the blade began to warp after 10 minutes of shaping. It cracked on the 3rd hour. The next attempt shattered under pressure. By sundown, Aoi sat outside the forge, arms streaked with soot, knuckles scraped. The core stone had only 1/3 of its charge left. Unagi watched quietly from the edge of the field, arms crossed. Know why it keeps breaking? Aoi shook his head. Because you're treating the forge like it's just a furnace, the old man said. But it's not. It's a reflection chamber. It takes in your mana, and returns your truth. He tapped his chest. If you're not honest with yourself, the blade won't hold. Aoi looked down at his hands. They trembled faintly. He closed his eyes. What was he hiding? Doubt. Fear. No. It was the quiet guilt he never said aloud. The feeling that even if he passed the university exam, even if he became strong enough to enter dungeons, it might not be enough. His parents might still struggle. His brother might still be cold at night. That his dreams might not be enough to protect them. The forge had felt that. And it had broken his blade for it. He stood again, slow and steady. The moon was rising now, soft light brushing the garden of blades. Aoi stepped back into the forge. He placed the last of the core stone on the altar. Breathed deeply. This time he didn't force his mana in. He let it flow. And in that flow he let the truth follow. I'm scared. But I still want to be strong. The forge glowed. The steel took shape. Not through heat, but through clarity. He moved slowly, steadily. Not trying to create the strongest sword or the fastest or the deadliest. Just a blade that would never abandon him. When the process was done, he stepped back. The sword floated above the forge, simple, single-edged, with a ripple in the center like a wave frozen in time. Not large. Not ornate. But quiet. Resolute. He held it in both hands. A name whispered itself in the back of his mind. Siren. The sword pulsed once, acknowledging its name. His auto core synced with it immediately. New pathways opened. Skill path activated, bonded blade technique, Siren style. Aoi stepped outside as dawn began to bleed into the clouds. Unagi was waiting, arms folded. Looks like you did it, he said. Aoi nodded, exhausted but calm. I named it. Unagi grunted in approval. About time. As the sky brightened and wind swept across the steel garden, Aoi held Siren in one hand and summoned 3 of his older flying swords with the other. They orbited him naturally now. Not with perfection, but with harmony. For the first time, he felt like a true swordsman. Not because he had power, but because now he had something that answered back. The entrance to the training dungeon loomed before them, gaping and jagged like a frozen roar. They stood in silence, the 4 of them, Aoi, Rika, Kale and Luna. The party had been assembled by the school's tactical division for cohesion testing. In other words, a controlled dungeon trial with subtle instructor oversight, and hidden pressure to see who could lead, and who might crack. Rika was tying her gloves tight, flame glyphs already glowing faintly beneath her sleeves. Kale stood a few paces back, arms crossed over his gleaming white coat. His curved sword, Rajinkin the lightning crescent, hung at his side, humming faintly with restrained power. Luna crouched near the gate, running one gloved finger along the edge of a mana line in the stone. Her expression was calm, but her ears twitched slightly. And Aoi stood at the front, Siren sheathed at his hip, for floating swords orbiting him slowly, his older conjures. They drifted in a loose formation, steady as breath. "It's quiet," Luna said. "Too quiet," Gil asked. She shook her head. "No. Just listening." The dungeon itself was alive with silence. A breath held. Aoi could feel it too. It wasn't fear exactly, but something had changed. His auto core, synced now with Siren, picked up subtle anomalies in the ambient mana. It read differently than any Tier 1 zone he'd encountered. Slightly off rhythm. Slightly deeper. As though something older had passed through here. Still they entered. The first chamber was smooth. Typical corridor. Moss-lit walls, low-level golems. Rika's fire spells handled them quickly, and Kale cut through the rest like a blade through silk. Aoi hung back, not out of fear but instinct. He was watching the rhythm. And the deeper they went, the more it changed. No creatures at the junctions. Traps missing from expected locations. Mana, thickening. "We shouldn't be this deep already," Luna muttered, consulting her map crystal. "We're skipping layers." Kale frowned. "The dungeon's shifting." "They don't do that in training instances," Rika said, uneasy. Aoi raised a hand. His sword stopped. "Everyone hold." He walked forward slowly, tracing the mana thread beneath the floor. And that's when he saw it. A jagged claw mark in the stone. Fresh. Definitely not part of the preset training design. He turned just as the air shifted behind them. And then it came. The beast was too large for the corridor. It crawled through the wall like shadow, rippling with scales that flickered in and out of visibility. Its eyes were slits of pale green light, wide and lidless. It wasn't a creature meant for this tier. Aoi's heart stilled. This was a phase aberration. A dungeon-class predator that had somehow drifted into a safe zone. "Move!" he shouted, launching two swords forward. The creature surged. Kale reacted first, blades clashing with a burst of electric mana. His sword lit up the corridor as he parried the creature's lunge, barely holding it back. Rika called up a flame wall behind them, sealing off their escape. "If we let it follow us up, it'll reach the other teams." "Containment then," Luna said grimly. "Got it." Aoi flanked left, channeling focus into his auto core. New routine, combat pattern Siren, shadow scale response. The forge-bonded sword Siren flickered into his hand, lighter than thought, heavier than fear. He breathed in, and moved. His flying swords wove around the beast's flanks, distracting it just enough for Luna to roll under its belly and drive a dagger into its joint. It shrieked, soundless but jarring, like a scream heard underwater. Aoi stepped in, pivoted, and slashed upward with Siren. The blade sang, not with sound but pressure. It connected cleanly, slicing along the beast's side. Black mist poured from the wound. It wasn't dead. Not even close. It turned its fury on Aoi. The charge was instant. A blur of scale and claw. Aoi raised Siren to guard, summoned all four flying swords around him in a circular shield. And still, crash. The impact sent him flying, skidding hard across the stone. Pain flared through his ribs. He coughed, then pushed himself up. His swords were wobbling in the air, disoriented but holding. His core throbbed, but the auto core pulsed again. Adapting, blade shell, shield harmonization version 1.1. He looked up, eyes clear. Kale was dueling the beast now, a dance of arcs and lightning strikes. Rika blasted flames at its legs to slow its footing. And Luna was setting traps. Aoi stood, called all swords to him, and whispered, "Now." The swords launched, not in separate arcs but in a spiral. A full rotation of slashes, designed to keep the creature's eyes fixed forward. Just long enough for the trap to go off. Luna's rune exploded under the creature's foot, throwing it off balance. Rika's flame lance pierced its side a heartbeat later. And Kale brought his sword down like a thunderbolt. It collapsed with a snarl, dissolving into smoke and static. Silence followed. For a long moment no one moved. Then Kale exhaled. "That wasn't supposed to happen." "No," Luna said. "It wasn't." "Do you think it was random?" Rika asked. Aoi stared at the place where the beast had vanished, and said quietly, "No." The others looked at him. He stepped forward, brushing fingers against the claw-marked stone. "I think it was looking for something." Later, as they exited the dungeon and the false daylight returned, Luna handed Aoi a data chip. Combat log, she said. You should study it. He nodded. Thanks. She looked at him for a long moment. That sword, the new one. It's real. It is. You feel different when you use it. Aoi didn't answer. He was thinking about the creature. About how it moved. About how his auto core had struggled, how it learned but only just barely kept him alive. And most of all, about how the dungeon had changed before the creature arrived. As if welcoming it. Kesharam Academy was quiet the next morning. Too quiet. Not the usual hush of early classes or the drowsy shuffle of students. It was the kind of silence that came when something had happened. Something big enough that everyone felt it, but no one wanted to say it first. Aoi walked the halls slowly. His ribs still ached from yesterday's fight. He could feel the auto-core weaving recovery protocols beneath the surface of his skin, tiny pulses of mana syncing with his nerves. But healing didn't change the weight behind his steps. He kept hearing the creature's roar in his mind. And the question it left behind, what was it doing in a beginner dungeon? He rounded the corner toward the instructor's wing, and stopped. A group of faculty stood clustered near the glass chamber known as the Skywatch Room, where important visitors were usually received. Standing among them was a woman he didn't recognize. She wore a long coat of white and gold, the hem lined with floating glyphs. Her hair shimmered like spun frost, and on her shoulder perched a crystal drone that blinked softly every few seconds. She looked serene, almost unbothered. But the air around her bent slightly with pressure. Like gravity took her more seriously than everyone else. Unagi stood near her, arms crossed. His eye met Aoi's. He nodded once. Aoi approached. The faculty parted without speaking. The woman turned to face him, eyes a pale violet, gaze sharp. So, she said softly, this is the boy with the flying swords. Aoi didn't speak. The crystal on her shoulder clicked. A faint projection appeared in the air, footage of yesterday's dungeon fight. The moment Aoi launched Siren. The spiral strike. The trap triggering. The clean kill. You have instinct, she said. More than that, you have refinement. You adapted mid-battle. That sword of yours, it's forged not summoned. She tilted her head slightly. I find that fascinating. Aoi finally spoke. Who are you? She smiled faintly. My name is Elora Voss. I represent the Skydome University Board of Evaluation. I'm not here to recruit you, she added quickly before anyone could speak. That would be premature. But I am here to observe. Aoi frowned. Why me? Unagi answered instead. Because you held the line. Aoi glanced at him. The others fought well, Unagi continued, but you were the anchor. The center. You directed without directing. You adjusted without freezing. And you didn't run. Elora nodded once. Even more important, you didn't chase victory. You chose containment. That's rare in students your age. Rika stepped into the room quietly. Kale followed behind. Luna stood in the doorway watching from the shadows. Elora looked at them. You're forming a party whether you realize it or not. Rika smirked. Kale scoffed. Luna shrugged. Elora turned back to Aoi. I'd like to extend a preliminary invitation, she said, to participate in the Sky Evaluation Pathway, an unofficial challenge tier. It runs parallel to the standard exam but includes deeper dungeons, live combat scenarios, and observation by faculty from multiple Sky universities. Aoi blinked. So it's a harder test. Yes, Elora said, smiling. And a brighter spotlight. He hesitated. He didn't care about fame, or competition, or being the center of anything. But a harder path meant stronger growth. Deeper dungeons meant richer loot. More risk, but also more experience. And more money. For his family. He glanced down at his hand. Siren vibrated faintly at his side, still synced. Ready. I accept, he said quietly. Elora's eyes glinted. Good. She turned, her coat flowing behind her like paper on the wind. I'll be watching, she said before vanishing through the outer gates. After she left, silence returned. Unagi sighed. You just made your life harder. I know. But also, more interesting. He walked off with a chuckle. Rika stepped beside Aoi. You're really going to do the Sky Path? He nodded. You're insane, she said. But I guess we're all in it now. Kale gave a low hum. I've heard of that program. Only 2 students from Kesharam have ever completed it. Aoi looked over. What happened to them? One became a guardian. The other disappeared into the endless labyrinth. Luna spoke softly from the back. Either way, they stopped being students. That night, Aoi stood again in the steel garden, Siren resting in his lap. He felt the shift in the wind again. A change in direction. He wasn't just learning anymore. Now he was being watched. And somewhere above, beyond the drifting clouds and city lights, the towers of the Sky Universities gleamed quietly, waiting. The air inside the trial gate didn't feel like a dungeon. It felt like thought. Then, so. Aoi stepped forward slowly, his footsteps echoing with unnerving sharpness. He wore his school-issued field uniform, a dark jacket with reinforced sleeves, and Siren hung across his back, light and silent. The chamber around him was made entirely of glass. Not decorative, not polished, just endless reflective panels, floor, walls, ceiling. The only thing not mirrored was the glowing blue line beneath his feet, guiding him forward like a ribbon through fog. This was the first phase of the Sky evaluation path. Walk the labyrinth. Reach the center. Alone. No guidance. No communication. Failure resets the mind to the entrance. Aoi didn't know what that last part meant. But the idea of his mind resetting made his palms sweat. He took another step. The line beneath his foot pulsed slightly, then branched in two directions. Left and right. Behind him, the entrance was gone. He chose right. The glass hallway lengthened. Each step echoed, not once but twice. First his own. Then a half second after, the sound again. But softer. He paused. Glanced behind. The corridor was empty. He took two more steps. Tap, 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 tap. Aoi exhaled slowly. It's not real, he muttered. Just reflection. Echoes. But Siren trembled slightly on his back. The auto core registered no threat. Yet something felt off. 15 minutes passed. He followed the glowing line through sharp angles, winding bends and open square chambers. His own reflection multiplied around him, sometimes accurate, sometimes subtly wrong. A sword in the left hand instead of the right. Eyes a shade too dark. A blink that came too late. He stopped at a four-way split. No glowing line. Just his own heartbeat, and 100 mirrored versions of it. Then, in one of the walls, his reflection didn't mimic his movement. He looked back, and smiled. He drew Siren instinctively. But nothing changed. The reflection remained still, smiling faintly. As if amused. He stepped closer. And it raised its blade. Aoi moved aside just as the mirror shattered from within. The reflection stepped through, real, solid, identical to him. Mind echo. The copy lunged forward with practice speed. Aoi blocked, parrying just in time, but the clone moved with his patterns. His learned rhythms. Even the floating swords that emerged from the air behind it mirrored his own summon set. But the strike was off. Barely. Predictable. The auto-core pulsed. Combat routine deviation detected. Aoi adjusted, using not what he knew but what he had recently improvised. A new feint. A spin step into a rising slash. His copy hesitated for a fraction too long. He struck. Glass splintered as the clone dissolved back into mirrored fragments. The corridor went silent again. Siren vibrated softly in his hand, acknowledging the growth. He continued forward. This time he ignored the guiding line when it reappeared. Instead, he followed the vibration of his sword. Siren responded not to direction, but intention. Each time he let his mind wander, the corridors looped back. But when he focused, when he moved with deliberate steps, carrying the quiet clarity he forged under Unagi's guidance, he found forward progress. He passed a memory trap, his younger brother calling out from a fake hallway. A voice so real it made his chest ache. But he didn't follow. He passed a whispering door that promised him the fastest path to strength. He didn't open it. He passed a vision of himself, standing atop the Sky University spires, cheered by thousands. He didn't smile. When he reached the center, it wasn't marked by triumph. Just a small stone platform beneath a single hanging crystal. The glass around him dimmed. The voices quieted. And from the silence, a calm voice echoed. You have passed the trial of reflection. Your strength is not raw power, but the discipline to walk without chasing shortcuts. You may proceed to the next trial, the arena of wings. Aoi exhaled slowly. Siren dimmed in his hand, then returned to its sheath. No fanfare. No applause. Just silence. And yet, something in him felt sharper. Not stronger, but steadier. He stood a little taller as the light surrounded him and lifted him from the glass floor. Back at the school days later, Luna stared at a projected status board listing trial clearances. Rika crossed her arms. He cleared it? Kale raised an eyebrow. Solo. First attempt. Was there ever any doubt? Luna said softly. Then she turned away before they could see her smile. Wind rushed past Aoi's ears, sharp and constant. The sky was endless here. No floor, no ceiling, just floating rings and shattered stone platforms suspended in air like scattered thoughts. Mana currents formed glowing trails between them, some strong enough to carry a body, others breaking apart without warning. This was no ordinary training ground. This was the arena of wings. A freefall battlefield in the upper atmosphere, where each move required vertical thinking. A voice echoed in the blue. Trial begins in 60 seconds. Objective: survive all waves. Final ranking based on airborne maneuvering, adaptation, and use of environmental platforms. Flight spells prohibited. Swords permitted. Aoi stood on a circular ring no wider than a dining table. It bobbed gently beneath his feet, held aloft by stabilized levitation mana. His heart beat steady, his eyes scanning the battlefield. He could see others, at least 6 students spread across neighboring rings, each spaced too far for casual shouting. Some were standing confidently. Others crouched low, holding on to whatever kept them grounded. He recognized one, Kale, 2 rings to his left. Their eyes met. Kale nodded once. The sky shimmered. And the countdown began. 3, 2, 1, begin. The moment the voice faded, the air cracked with sound. Not thunder. Not wind. But the beating of metal wings. Dozens of flying constructs emerged from above, gilded avian forms with blades for feathers, designed to test reaction speed and aerial defense. They dove toward the platforms like falcons hunting prey. Aoi reacted instinctively. He raised one hand. 4 flying swords launched upward in a protective arc, forming a rotating shield. One sword slashed an incoming drone. Another knocked a feather blade away before it could reach him. His platform shook under the impact. He leapt. Off the edge. Free fall. His mind sharpened instantly. No ground. No anchor. Just motion. He summoned Siren midair, holding it reverse in one hand, and sent his floating swords outward like stepping stones. They formed in an uneven arc, just stable enough to land on. 1, 2, 3, slip. He caught himself, barely, flipping midair to catch the edge of a crumbling slab. Then twisted his body into a slide and kicked off the platform, his auto-core already recalibrating his trajectory. New maneuver registered, aerial dash pivot, version 0.9. Another drone approached. He spun Siren in a half-arc and let the flying swords do the work. Whirl step. A loose formation around his body, intercepting from 5 angles at once. It wasn't perfect. He took a glancing cut to his shoulder. But it was enough to stay in motion. Far above, from a hovering instructor's platform, Alara Voss watched silently. A soft breeze lifted her coat as her crystal drone recorded everything. "He's not just reacting," she murmured. "He's evolving." Below, Kale shouted as he cut through a golden hawk with a burst of lightning from his blade. "You're treating them like swords," he called out to Aoi. Aoi caught a glance between spins. "Aren't they?" Kale's voice was sharp. "No. They're wings. Think like a flyer, not a fencer." Aoi blinked. Then it clicked. He stopped commanding the swords like weapons, and started thinking of them as movement tools. He positioned one behind, 2 ahead, one angled low. Then jumped, trusting his intent. The swords caught him, shifting under his boots like sliding pads. He glided, not fell. The auto-core pulsed in rhythm, syncing with the aerial paths, updating the flow. The arena came alive beneath him. He danced. Drones fell in spirals of metal feathers. He looped around debris rings. He redirected mana pulses midair. His movements lost their stiffness, replaced by a fluid, quiet grace. He wasn't flying. But he was no longer falling either. The last wave came as a spiral storm, 10 drones converging at once. Kale was already winded. Rika, 2 rings away, fought fiercely but was surrounded. Aoi surged upward, sword steps forming beneath him like stairs in the sky. He moved over Rika's zone, calling out, "Drop low." She ducked. Aoi's flying swords unleashed a burst pattern, Siren at the center, splitting the formation in 2 with a controlled sonic strike. All 10 drones shattered at once. Silence followed. Then the sky began to glow. Trial complete. Participant: Takahashi Aoi. Score: 94 out of 100. Note: high maneuverability. Exceptional adaptive form. Weapon control synchronized at level 3. Recommendation: advanced tier unlocked. Aoi floated down to the main ring, breathing slowly. His hands trembled, not from exhaustion but exhilaration. This had been the first time he felt free in battle. Not just surviving, but soaring. Later, in the academy lounge, Kale walked over with a bottle of chilled crystal cider and dropped it next to him. You did good. Aoi looked up. You too. Kale shrugged. You figured it out faster than I did. Took me 3 trials before I stopped thinking like a swordsman. A beat passed. Then Kale added, You're not just strong, Takahashi. You're different. Aoi looked down at his hands. His fingers still tingled from the pulse of wind beneath them. Yeah, he said softly. I'm starting to feel that too. The wind was quiet that evening. Not gone, just gentler. Like it had tired itself out and settled in to listen. Aoi sat alone on a bench tucked beneath the academy's eastern skybridge. It overlooked the lower islands, those quieter places where mana didn't shine as brightly, where people worked longer hours for thinner meals. One of them was his home. The dusk painted everything in amber. A notification blinked softly across the edge of his interface lens. Not a system message. Not from the school. New message received. Sender, Ren Takahashi. Aoi's breath caught. He tapped it open with trembling fingers. Oni-chan. The first word came with a short, blurry video clip. His younger brother's face filled the screen, wide-eyed, messy-haired, wearing that oversized hoodie Aoi had bought him from a roadside stall 2 years ago. It was patched now. A different color thread ran along the seams. I saw your name on the school news. They said you passed the glass labyrinth on your first try. I told everyone at school you were going to become a skydome hunter and they didn't believe me, so I showed them the article. Now everyone says I'm the brother of a sword master. Aoi smiled without realizing it. Then the clip shifted. Dad says you probably don't sleep enough and Mom told me to remind you to eat more soup. I'm doing okay. I'm still getting top scores in mana control. Well, not top, but like 3rd in class, which is pretty good, right? Also, I tried practicing with a broom like a sword, but it snapped, so Mom made me wash dishes for a week. He laughed, quiet but real. The message paused. Then came a small shift in tone. I know it's hard over there. You don't say much in your replies, and I know that means you're tired. I just wanted to say, we're proud of you. Me, Mom, Dad. We're really proud. The screen darkened for a second. Then came a final line, typed, not spoken. Don't lose yourself, Oni-chan. Even if you fly high, remember where the wind came from. The message faded. And Aoi sat very still. He felt it in his chest, not a heavy weight but something gentler. The kind of ache that reminded you were alive. It had been weeks since he thought about home with clarity. The trials, the training, the danger, it had all consumed his focus. But that voice, Ren's bright, excited voice, had cut through everything. He looked down at Siren resting beside him. Its edge shimmered faintly in the twilight, as if it too had heard the words and was holding them. Aoi took a slow breath. He wasn't just walking the sky path for strength. He was walking it so Ren would never have to. So his family wouldn't need to ration heat crystals in the winter, or argue over second jobs, or pretend broken things still worked. This wasn't a story about glory. It was survival. With meaning. Back in the dorms, Rika peeked in as he returned. You okay? She asked. Aoi nodded. Yeah. Something on your mind? He hesitated. Then, quietly, he held up the message crystal. Got a letter. She walked over, sitting beside him on the dorm step. Good one? The best. They sat in silence for a while. No talk of trials. No mention of swords. Just the soft hum of city mana far below, and the flicker of sky lanterns in the distance. Then Rika leaned against him slightly and murmured, You'll make it, Aoi. I believe in you. He didn't answer right away. But in his heart, the words settled like stone. The forge in Unagi's garden was different this time. It wasn't the stone dome that had guided Aoi through the birth of Siren. Not the low fire, nor the quiet hammer. This forge was alive. A trial site created by the Academy for Skypath qualifiers. And it floated. High above the city, a single island of stone hovered in the air like a sliver of forgotten mountain. Upon it stood the trial forge, an ancient mana construct built into the rock itself. Spirals of blue crystal pulsed in the ground. The wind howled non-stop here, wild and unfiltered by city barriers. This isn't just crafting, Unagi had warned. This is resonance forging. The island will shape the blade, but only if your intent is steady. If your heart flickers, the wind will scatter it. Now Aoi stood alone at the summit, a glowing shard of pale blue core stone in his hand. Lighter than Siren's material. Shimmering like the edge of breath. He closed his eyes. What kind of sword do I need? Siren was his center, his calm. A blade that anchored his thoughts. But this new sword wouldn't be like that. This one would fly, faster, freer, less controlled. An extension not of his discipline, but his instinct. He stepped forward. The wind greeted him like a wall. Forging began not with fire, but focus. He placed the core stone onto the altar at the island's center, where it hovered weightlessly. The forge responded with a low, steady hum, and mana lines spread outward like glowing vines. The island trembled once. Then it began to test him. A phantom wind lashed across his face, hard enough to sting. He stood still. Test 1, movement. From the forge rose 5 floating blades, trial illusions. They darted toward him in sudden arcs. Too fast to react with thought. He moved by feel. Ducked. Spun. Summoned a temporary sword with a flick of mana to redirect the last strike. Cling. Silence returned. The core stone glowed brighter. Test 2, memory. The wind shifted. This time images formed in the swirling air. His little brother standing in the kitchen. His mother sleeping at the table. His father silently repairing an old mana lamp. They weren't illusions meant to trick. They were questions. A voice echoed from the wind, not a voice he knew but something ancient and old. Why do you fight? Aoi swallowed. He could say power. He could say strength. But none of that would be true. I fight, he said slowly, so no one I love has to. The wind accepted this. And passed. Test 3 choice. The forge rose higher, lifting the core stone into the sky above the altar. Now it pulsed with 2 colors, pale blue, and flickers of gold. A voice spoke again. 2 shapes. One swift, untouchable. The other steady, unyielding. Only one will form. Choose. Aoi didn't hesitate. I choose swift. His swords could already defend. Siren could already anchor. What he needed now was motion. A blade that danced. A blade that whispered through the wind and never looked back. The core stone shattered. But not into pieces. It unfolded, petals of light blooming outward, forming a long, slender shape. A sword without a guard. Curved. Lightweight. Built for speed, not force. Its edge shimmered with threads of wind itself. The name whispered itself to him just as Siren had. Hey. As his hand closed around the hilt, the forge island shook. The wind burst outward, and then stilled completely. Not because it had stopped, but because it now followed him. He opened his eyes. And for the first time hate floated at his side, gliding on its own. Not hovering like his conjured swords, but coasting on invisible currents. He summoned Siren into his other hand. And the 2 blades pulsed in rhythm. Not opposites. Not rivals. But balance. Anchor and arrow. Center and motion. Stillness and storm. When Aoi returned to the school that night, Luna was waiting on the roof of the east wing, legs swinging over the edge. Took you long enough, she said. He stood beside her, the wind still calm in his wake. She glanced sideways. That a new sword? He nodded. What's it called? Hate. Looks fast. It is. Luna smiled faintly. Good. You'll need it for the next mission. He raised an eyebrow. Already? She held out a map crystal. Unscheduled anomaly. Deep sector. We're going in tomorrow. Me, you, Rika, Kale. Optional, but you're going to want to be there. Aoi took the crystal. The dungeon coordinates flickered, red and pulsing. And for just a moment he thought he saw a symbol buried beneath the layers. The spiral. The mark of the endless labyrinth. The entrance gate shimmered with unstable mana. It wasn't part of the school's official list. It didn't appear in the student network feeds. And yet, here it stood, half buried beneath the roots of an overgrown Sky Island tree, humming faintly with the wrong kind of resonance. The kind that made the back of Aoi's teeth buzz. Luna crouched beside the gate's keystone, her fingers hovering just over the rune lines. Confirmed, she murmured. This place isn't registered. Kale stood beside her, one hand on the hilt of his blade, eyes narrowed. Which means it shouldn't be open. And yet, Rika said, stepping down onto the mossy stone, here we are. The 4 of them stood alone on a forgotten floating islet, the sky dimmed with incoming dusk and the clouds shifting in low patterns beneath their feet. Aoi looked at the gate again. It wasn't large, just a half circle of silvered stone, half cracked and etched with a spiral sigil. But the air around it felt deeper than it should. Wider, somehow. Luna turned to face them. I sent the scan results to Professor Unagi. He pinged back one word. What was it? Aoi asked. Spiral route. Kale exhaled slowly. That's a forbidden zone. Rika's eyes narrowed. But not technically off limits if it's open and not sealed. Luna nodded. And since we're on the sky path, we're allowed to enter trial zones at our own risk. It's a loophole. Convenient, Aoi muttered. No, Luna said quietly. It's a test. A silence settled. Then Aoi stepped forward and reached for Siren. The blade shimmered into his hand. Hayate floated beside him, light as a breath. I'm going in, he said. Kale followed without a word. Rika shrugged, summoned her flame orbs and said, well, if you're going to die, I might as well make it look impressive. Luna was already typing in the entry code. The gate pulsed once, and opened. The spiral root sector didn't feel like a dungeon. Felt like a wound. The walls were organic, pale bark twisted into arcs, dripping with strands of mana mist. The air pulsed, not with pressure but with echoes, as if the dungeon itself was remembering things in real time. It's responding to us, Luna said. Mapping our movement. That's normal for adaptive dungeons, Rika replied. Not when they do it before we move. They walked carefully, weapons out, light sources minimal. Aoi let Hayate drift ahead like a scout, gliding just inches above the floor, its edge catching bits of mist as it passed. His auto-core updated constantly, feeding back new pattern data, but the system was confused. Unknown terrain type. Unstable density. Combat predictions. Unreliable. Kale finally muttered, I don't like this. Then, the spiral pulse hit. A soft tremor in the floor. A sudden low note like a distant string being plucked. The corridor twisted. Not in direction, but in memory. Aoi's vision flickered, and for a moment he saw his brother standing in front of him again. Not scared. Just present. Then gone. The corridor was empty. What was that? Rika whispered, holding her flame tight. A resonance spike, Luna said. Hallucination class. It's feeding off emotional memories. Of course it is, Kale muttered. Why wouldn't it be? Aoi swallowed. He forced his heartbeat to steady. Hayate pulsed faintly in the mist, hovering just to his left. Then came the sound. Not footsteps. Not breathing. But scraping. Wet and soft. Like something dragging itself across bark. The team shifted into formation. Above, Luna said quietly. They looked up. And there it was. Something long and segmented, pale and transparent, crawling along the ceiling. It had no eyes. No limbs. Just threads of shifting mana hanging from its sides like kelp. And then, from the center of its translucent form, a face. Half-formed. A young boy. Mouth open like it was still trying to scream. Kale exhaled sharply. We're leaving. Now. But the gate behind them had closed. And the thing dropped. The first clash was chaos. Kale lunged forward, striking with a lightning-infused cut. The creature barely reacted. His blade passed through, but resistance followed as though hitting fluid steel. Rika blasted a fire arc across the hallway, forcing it back. Aoi called his swords forward, Siren at the lead, Hayate circling wide. Hayate moved faster than the eye, slashing across one of the mana threads with a snap. The creature shrieked, not from its mouth but from its body. The bark walls shook. The face in its body flickered again, this time not a boy but an instructor Aoi had once known. Another memory. The creature was made of echoes. This thing's not real, Luna called out. It's not whole. It's feeding on mental resonance. How do we stop it? Aoi shouted. She didn't answer. Because she didn't know. Then Aoi did something he'd never tried before. He closed his eyes. And synced Siren and Hayate at the same time. Their pulses aligned. Stillness and motion. Anchor and blade. He offered them a command not in words but in emotion. And they responded. New mode activated, twin pulse formation, windseal gate. The swords spiraled around him in opposite orbits. And as he stepped forward the air split. Not loud. Just clean. His blades passed through the creature's center. Paused, trembled, then fractured. With a burst of soft wind and memory light, it dispersed. Gone. The corridor fell silent. They didn't speak for a long time. Eventually Luna broke it. That wasn't supposed to be here. Rika nodded. Or anywhere. Kale looked at Aoi. You synced both swords at once. I didn't mean to, Aoi admitted. It just happened. No one said anything for a while. Then Luna stepped forward and placed a marker rune on the wall. We report this. This isn't just a training zone. It's a gateway. To what? Rika asked. Aoi looked back at the now empty spiral chamber. And whispered, the edge of something deeper. The spiral root chamber didn't reset. That was the first sign something was wrong. Most dungeon sectors, especially test zones, were designed to cycle after a high-threat encounter. Mana would cleanse, terrain would return to its base state, and ambient pressure would stabilize. But here, the wall still pulsed. The bark glistened with residual memory mist. And the spiral sigil beneath their feet, barely visible through the haze, remained lit. Aoi stood near the center of the corridor, watching Hayate drift slowly above the ground like a scout falcon. Siren rested quietly in its sheath, pulsing at intervals like a second heartbeat. What now? Gil asked. He was already inspecting the far wall for hidden doors, but his voice lacked conviction. Rika tightened her scarf. You mean other than screaming and running for the nearest gate? Luna was crouched near a mossy knot on the wall, her fingers brushing over faint glyphs that glowed only when touched. I found something, she murmured. Not a path. A file. Kale raised an eyebrow. You mean a data file? Inside a dungeon? Encoded into the mana threads. She tapped her map crystal, overlaying a sigil onto the wall. It's old. Older than this sector. Aoi stepped closer. The pattern was different. Not just in design, but in feeling. The mana signature was dense. Ancient. Not student-made, not school-embedded. It had no anchor registry. Let's pull it, Luna said, voice calm. You sure? Rika asked. No, Luna replied. But I want to know what kind of ghost tries to eat our memories. She placed a resonance shard into the wall. The glyph flared. Then the air itself shook. The file didn't appear as text. It manifested as a vision, a flickering projection in the mist. Not whole. Not stable. But real. They saw a room, stone walls, pillars cracked by time, overgrown with glassy vines. In the center, a pedestal. Upon it, a sword. Not floating. Not glowing. Just resting. Silent. Then a voice spoke. Female. Tired. Faint. Record #7. Location. Root Chamber 6. Specimen bonded, then fractured. Emotional link failure at resonance depth 4. Subject unconscious. Possible reset event. Terminated sequence. Note for next cycle. Reconfigure emotional anchor. Reduce recursion memory bleed. Don't let them remember too much next time. The image blurred. Then the voice again, softer now. Almost like it was speaking to itself. It's cruel. But they can't grow if they know. Can't carry that weight. The vision ended. The mist faded. No one spoke. For a long time, only the soft flicker of Rika's fire kept the shadows away. That was a recording, Kale said slowly. But it didn't feel like tech. It felt like memory. Because it was, Luna replied. This whole sector is an echo archive. Aoi looked at her. What's that? Old tech. Lost tech. Back when mana systems were still evolving. There were research zones where spells were encoded with memories. Thoughts stored in structure. Emotional data layered into magic itself. Sounds risky, Rika muttered. Luna gave a humorless smile. That's why they're all gone. Or sealed. Kale looked between them. So someone was trying to train people by erasing and rerunning their memories? Not just training, Luna said. Shaping. She tapped her map crystal again. That spiral creature we fought, it wasn't just feeding off memories. It was part of the process. A failure. A corrupted trial node, maybe? And it still worked, Aoi said quietly. Everyone looked at him. I saw people I remembered, but not like flashbacks. More like they were still real. Like the past had just slid sideways into now. He didn't mention the part where he heard his own voice calling back to him. A version that didn't belong to any memory he could recall. They moved carefully after that. The archive corridor branched once, then narrowed. The walls began to lose their bark texture, shifting into smoother stone laced with runes that glowed faintly only when walked past. Each glyph whispered. Not in words but in pressure. Like steps on old wood. Like silence holding its breath. Luna finally signaled to stop. We're at a node chamber, she said. Looks stable. The room beyond was circular. Empty. Except for a single crystal floating at the center. Aoi approached slowly. Hayate hovered behind him. Siren stayed quiet. As he neared, the crystal pulsed. And without warning, everything stopped. He was alone. No Luna. No Kale. No Rika. Just silence. And a mirrored version of himself standing across the chamber. It wasn't like the reflection clone from the glass labyrinth. This one felt. Its posture. Its breath. Its gaze. Identical, but heavier. As if it carried things Aoi didn't remember yet. The copy stepped forward. Aoi mirrored the movement instinctively, until he caught himself. He stopped. The reflection didn't. It walked to him, slow and calm. Then, in a voice exactly like his own, it whispered, "You left them behind." Aoi's heart jumped. "What are you talking about?" "You wanted strength more than anything. So you let it happen. The memory was erased. You asked for it. You signed the contract." "I didn't." "Not this you. But the one before." The room pulsed. The figure began to fracture, like a memory being forgotten. "You're not the first to walk this path, Aoi. Just the first to wake up halfway through." Then it vanished. The room returned. Luna was at his side, shaking his shoulder gently. "Hey, you okay? You just stopped moving." Kale stood by the door, tense. Rika was holding a flame, hand tight. Aoi blinked. He looked down at the crystal. It was dark now. "I'm fine," he lied. But in his chest, both Siren and Hayate pulsed once. As if they'd heard every word. That night, back in his dorm, Aoi didn't sleep. He sat by the window watching the sky islands drift quietly past. His swords rested nearby. But he didn't reach for them. Instead, he held the crystal Luna gave him, a copy of the archive log. She hadn't said a word after they left the dungeon. Neither had Kale or Rika. They all felt it. Something had shifted. And somewhere inside him he knew. He hadn't discovered Spiral Route. He'd returned to it. Aoi stood alone on the upper practice decks high above the school courtyards. The air here was colder, sharper, untouched by the warm mana currents that heated most of the academy. Thin clouds drifted just below the platform edge, and the wind whipped freely through his cloak. It was the perfect place to test a blade that refused to stay still. Hayate hovered beside him, motionless, but only just. Its blade shimmered in the light like running water, and its edge caught faint trails of wind without moving a muscle. "I know you're listening," Aoi said softly. The sword pulsed. Not in color. Not in light. In presence. He exhaled slowly and stepped forward. He'd cleared the area for live training. No one else around. No Luna, no Rika, no Kale. Just the school's projected combat golems, pale humanoid constructs, each loaded with random movement and elemental patterns. He activated 5. They appeared at once in a spread, 2 in front, 2 to the sides and 1 above, floating with a mana disk underfoot. Aoi didn't draw Siren. Only Hayate. And he didn't swing it. He released it. The blade launched forward in a curve, not a straight lunge, but a wide spiral that grazed the edge of one golem before twisting sharply upward to intercept the airborne target. The moment it passed, the air split behind it. Not a sonic boom. Not a spell burst. Just clean air displacement, so sharp it sliced the edge of a platform tile. The golems reacted. 2 cast water jets. 1 dashed forward, striking low. Aoi barely stepped back. Hayate came flying back, just in time to catch the strike and parry it without Aoi's command. He froze. The blade hovered in front of him. His pulse had changed. Faster now. Not erratic but alert. Like a bird that had just remembered how to fly. Aoi raised his hand. The blade didn't move. Instead, it circled him once, then pulsed again. As if asking permission to go faster. Aoi nodded. The next 30 seconds blurred. Hayate wove through the golems like a ribbon caught in a storm. It didn't just dodge and cut, it read them. Moved before they did. Its cuts were shallow, precise. Disabling blows, not lethal ones. Then, without warning, it stopped midair. And for a moment, just a flicker, Aoi saw something strange. A pattern along the blade's surface. Not part of the metal. A mark. A swirling symbol, one he remembered from the Echo archive. The spiral. It pulsed faintly, then disappeared. The golems deactivated. The session ended. Aoi stood still, staring at the sword now hovering silently at his side. "You weren't made with that," he whispered. Hayate didn't answer. But he could feel it now, deep in the core. Somewhere inside the blade, a fragment of something else had taken root. A memory. Not his. Not the sword's. Something older. Later that day, Aoi sat with Unagi under the sword tree near the southern garden, sipping hot leaf broth in silence. He hadn't told him everything yet. Just the part about the blade's behavior. Unagi didn't speak at first. Then, without looking up, he said, "It's rare but not impossible." "What is?" "Soul drift," Unagi said. "Sometimes, during resonance forging, especially on unstable sites, remnants of old mana paths attach to the blade's forming core. Not energy. Not power. Impressions." Aoi frowned. "You're saying Hayate picked something up from Spiral Route?" Or Spiral Root picked something up from you, Unagi replied. Either way, the sword is more than it was forged to be now. Aoi looked down at the blade, which now rested across his lap, perfectly still. What do I do? You listen, Unagi said. The worst mistake a swordsman can make is assuming the weapon is only a tool. Yours is closer to a partner. Aoi's grip tightened slightly. That word echoed in his head. Partner. Not an extension. Not a weapon. Something that shared the fight. That evening, Aoi returned to the steel garden behind Unagi's house. He placed Siren in the grass beside him. Then knelt in the circle of moonlight, holding Hayate upright. He closed his eyes. Let the sword float. Let his breathing sink to the rhythm of its pulse. And then, very faintly, he felt it. A flicker of sound, barely audible. Like wind passing through memory. A voice, distant and fading. You were the last one I trusted. Aoi's eyes snapped open. The voice was gone. The sword pulsed once, then went still. The representative didn't knock. She arrived unannounced, walking through the school's east gate as if the clouds themselves had invited her. Her coat was long and lined with silver-tipped feathers. She wore no rank insignia, but her very presence pulled the air around her taut, like the moment before a storm breaks. Her boots rang out across the mana stone tiles, each step quiet but intentional. By the time she reached the head office, most of the faculty had already gathered. Only one student had been summoned. Aoi stood at the far end of the room, arms folded behind his back, expression carefully neutral. He could feel Hayate pulsing quietly from its sheath. Waiting. The woman's eyes found him immediately. You're smaller than I expected, she said with the trace of a smile. Aoi didn't respond. Principal Reika cleared her throat. This is Lady Velathair saying. She speaks on behalf of Stormrider Hall, one of the elite arms of Archeon Sky University. A few teachers stiffened. Archeon. The rival school to Skydome. More aggressive. More militant. Known for producing battlecasters, dungeon raiders, and elite enforcement units. I'm not here to poach, Velathair said casually. Just to talk. She turned back to Aoi. Your records from the Arena of Wings and the Spiral Root sector were leaked. Aoi blinked. Leaked? She smiled, slightly amused. There are no secrets in the sky, boy. Just levels of observation. And you're now very visible. He didn't answer, so she kept talking. I'm not going to offer you a slot. Yet. But I will say this, Stormrider trains real hunters. We don't make philosophers. We don't make dreamers. We make closers. The kind who go into places like Spiral Root and come back with results. Aoi's jaw tightened. And you, she continued, stepping closer, are showing signs of rare mana fusion. A bonded blade and an adaptive sword, both pulsing on custom rhythms? That's research-level talent. I'm not a lab rat, Aoi said. No, Velathair said. You're something more dangerous. A boy who doesn't know what he already is. That silence fell again. Only Hayate stirred, its pulse rising ever so slightly. Velathair finally stepped back. Here, she said, tossing a small data crystal into the air. Aoi caught it. Training grounds. Off-site. Discreet. You don't have to agree to anything. Just come and watch. See what we do with people like you. She turned to leave, but paused at the doorway. When you're done waiting for the world to notice you, she said softly, come fly with those who already have. And then she was gone. Aoi stood in silence long after the others had dispersed. Only Unagi remained, leaning against the back wall, arms folded, expression unreadable. You're not going, right? The old man asked. I don't know. Unagi raised an eyebrow. Aoi stared at the crystal in his hand. It's not about ambition, he said. It's curiosity. They saw the sword. The bond. They understood it before I even explained. They don't want you, Unagi said. They want what's inside you. I know. And? Aoi looked up. I want to know what that is too. That night he didn't sleep. He didn't train. He just stood on the edge of the Sky Dorm's rooftop, staring out at the drifting cloud belts beyond the academy's lights. The stars above flickered faintly, barely visible through the layers of magic in the air. And somewhere deep within him, Hayate pulsed again. Not in warning. In anticipation. By morning the choice had already made itself. Aoi activated the crystal. Coordinates appeared, an isolated training outpost on a floating island called Stone Vault Theta. Off-grid. Half-regulated. Stormrider turf. He sent one message. To Luna. Going off-grid for 24. No backup needed. Her reply came within seconds. Understood. Just don't come back with tattoos and a personality cult. He chuckled. Then packed only what he needed. Siren Hay-8, a standard core stone charger and a memory tag. Just in case. Stone Vault Theta was smaller than he expected. Just a single black stone fortress perched atop a jagged cliff face, surrounded by a circular training field and suspended combat platforms. Mana cannons lined the outer rim. No banners. No colors. Just steel. Velither met him at the gate. No uniform? She asked, arching an eyebrow. I'm not here to join. Then you're exactly the kind of person we want. She led him through a corridor lit by cold white crystals. They passed no guards. No instructors. Only students. Their eyes tracked him carefully, but not with arrogance. With calculation. A few had scars. One had a visible mana prosthetic wired into her shoulder. They weren't students in the normal sense. They were fighters. Velither stopped at the end of the hall. A door opened. Inside an arena. Black stone. No crowd. No lights. Just mist and shadow. I want to see it, she said. The twin pulse. Aoi raised an eyebrow. Now. Here. Now. No pressure. If you don't want to fight, just walk away. He didn't move. Siren pulsed once in its sheath. Hay-8 floated into his hand. He stepped forward. The opponent entered without a word. A student in dark armor, twin blades already drawn. His steps were smooth, relaxed, but every movement whispered training far beyond Aoi's level. Meet Tenrin, Velither said from the edge. Rank 3 in our current class. Quick, sure. Fair. The spar began. No countdown. Tenrin moved fast, too fast for a first strike. He aimed for Aoi's side with a feint, then twisted for a rising slash. Aoi barely blocked with Siren. Hay-8 moved on its own, redirecting a follow-up slash before Aoi even saw it. Tenrin backed off. Not bad, he murmured. Aoi adjusted his stance. Then let go. Siren in one hand. Hay-8 free-floating. They pulsed, synced, and moved. For the first time since Spiral Root, Aoi felt it fully. Not just swords responding, but a trio, his will and the blades and something between them. They moved together. Siren intercepted. Hay-8 harassed. Aoi flowed between. And Tenrin, despite all his polish, struggled. They fought for 3 minutes, then 5. Tenrin finally stepped back, breathing harder, and smiled. I like you, he said. You don't fight to win. You fight to understand. Aoi nodded once. Same to you. Afterward, Velither stood beside him in the arena. Her tone was calm, but her eyes burned bright. You don't belong in a quiet school, she said. You belong on a battlefield of growth. Aoi looked at her, then at his swords, then down at his hand. The scar across his palm from Hay-8's forging still tingled faintly. I don't belong anywhere yet, he said, and left. The moon rose red. Not blood-colored. Not ominous. Just deeper. As if someone had turned the world down a shade, and the sky was holding its breath. The mid-moon festival at Kesharam wasn't flashy. Just paper lanterns hung from the outer balconies, a few mana flares, floating lights drifting lazily in the air. Most students used it as an excuse to skip drills and eat roasted crystal fruit on the roof. But this year the celebration had an extra edge. A duel had been called. And the name on the challenger line? Cedric Vance. A third year from a noble house. Ranked in the upper 30s across all affiliated Skypath schools. Known for his speed-based glaive style and his attitude. The name on the second line? Aoi Takahashi. Aoi stood quietly near the observation deck, watching the lanterns drift across the sky. He hadn't planned to fight. Hadn't even heard the challenge until it was too late to withdraw. Apparently, Cedric had filed it publicly. Filed it after Aoi's visit to Stone Vault Theta. After word spread about the Spiral Root incident. And now, everyone was watching. Rika found him just past sundown, arms crossed, red scarf flapping lightly. You gonna dodge it? She asked. No. You should. He raised an eyebrow. You think I'll lose? No, she said. I think he's not fighting to win. I think he's fighting to ruin you. Aoi said nothing. She stepped closer. You've made people nervous, Aoi. You've done things in silence that others train years to even imagine. And now you've got 2 swords that move on their own. He smiled faintly. You make it sound impressive. It is, she said. And that's the problem. Pause. Then, Luna's prepping medkits just in case. Kale's betting on you. She trailed off. You're worried. She nodded. Yeah. Aoi turned to look at the stars. Me too. Later that night he sat in the steel garden, alone. Hayate drifted slowly in the air, circling him in wide, lazy arcs. Siren rested across his knees, unmoving. The auto core pulsed softly beneath his ribs, syncing with the swords, listening, learning. He ran a cloth over Siren's edge. Not to polish it, just to calm his hands. The last time he dueled formally, it was in the early Sky Trials. That had been before Spiral Root. Before Stone Vault. Before the whispering voice in Hayate's core. Now, things felt different. He wasn't scared of Cedric. He was scared of what might happen if he lost control. If the swords responded not to his mind but his fear. Just past midnight, Kale appeared at the edge of the garden path, arms folded. "You're still up," he said. "Couldn't sleep." Kale walked over, sat beside him without asking. "Want to know what Cedric's planning?" Aoi didn't look at him. "You heard? I was in his hall earlier. Some students talk loud when they think they're better than you." Aoi waited. Kale glanced at him. "He's aiming to disarm you. Humiliate, not defeat. He wants you uncentered." "Figured," Aoi said. "He'll go for the left side," Kale continued. "You lead with Siren more often. He's going to try and break your stance, make you lean too much on the bond." Aoi raised an eyebrow. "You've been watching me train?" Kale didn't answer. Didn't have to. They sat in silence a while longer. Then Kale stood. "Break him early," he said. "End it fast." Aoi watched him leave. Then looked back at his swords. Hayate pulsed once. Siren hummed. And something inside Aoi stilled. By dawn, the sparring circle had been expanded. Students gathered early, even those who usually slept through drills. The air buzzed with quiet tension, and the sky above was streaked with pale gold clouds, glowing faintly. Cedric stood at the far end of the ring, his silver glaive resting across his shoulders. He wore a confident smirk and a uniform that had been reinforced with crest threads, noble house embroidery woven with manhwarerecap filament. Aoi wore the same jacket he always did. No armor. No markings. Just the quiet pulse of the two swords hovering behind him. Siren to his right. Hayate to his left. He didn't draw either. Not yet. The signal orb hovered between them. Formal duel. Sky path regulated. Ends on knockout, concession or instructor override. Begin on signal. A hush fell. Then, flash. Cedric moved first. Fast. Too fast for a student outside the top 50. His glaive struck with a twist of wind, air pressure amplified by a burst glyph sewn into his gloves. The arc came low, then high, then spun in a hook that would have crushed anyone's guard. Aoi didn't guard. He stepped aside. Cleanly. Then let Hayate launch. The sword shot forward, not to strike but to cut the wind. It passed just under the path of Cedric's glaive, unraveling the pressure mid-swing and forcing Cedric off rhythm. Aoi closed the gap in a blink. Siren came up, not in a strike but in a tap against Cedric's knee guard. A warning. Cedric scowled. "You think this is a game?" he snapped. Aoi didn't answer. He stepped back. Hayate returned to orbit. Cedric charged again, angrier this time. He aimed for Aoi's shoulder, trying to disarm. A feint turned into a spin kick. Aoi ducked. Let Siren rise. Let Hayate spiral. This time both blades moved together. Synced. A pulse. A rhythm. Cedric's strike faltered, thrown off by the pressure in the air. He stumbled. Aoi didn't strike. But Siren tapped his glaive's center shaft, right where the glyph was stitched. It deactivated. Cedric's balance broke. He dropped to one knee. The crowd gasped. Aoi stepped forward. Raised Siren. Not for a finishing strike. For eye contact. "You challenged me," Aoi said calmly. "But this fight was never about power." Cedric looked up, breathing hard. "You wanted me to doubt. But all you did was show me what I've built." He let Siren fall to his side. "Do you yield?" Cedric looked at him for a long moment. Then closed his eyes. "Yes." The orb flashed blue. Match over. The crowd didn't cheer. They didn't have to. Everyone felt it. The weight of what just happened. The kind of silence that followed a sword being drawn, and not used. Aoi turned and walked away. Hayate drifted behind him like a ribbon in slow wind. The dreams started the night after the duel. Not nightmares. Not vivid memories. Just fragments. A field of black sand. A broken sword buried hilt deep in ash. And wind, cold, dry, whispering through a sky with no sun. Aoi would wake each time with his hands clenched and his breath caught, the sound of a name he couldn't quite remember fading from the edge of thought. The auto core detected no anomalies, neither did his sleep monitor. But Hayate pulsed strangely the next morning. Not in distress, not warning, more like anticipation. Yanagi noticed it immediately. "You've changed," he said, offering Aoi tea at the edge of the steel garden. Aoi didn't deny it. "I've been dreaming," he said quietly, "about a sword I haven't forged yet." Yanagi raised an eyebrow. "You see it?" Aoi nodded. "In the ground. Black metal. Looks burned. I don't know why, but I know it's waiting." Yanagi tapped his cane against the stone. "You're approaching the third forge," he said. Aoi looked up. "You mean my next sword?" "I mean your next choice," Yanagi said. "The first sword anchors your will. The second reveals your motion. But the third..." His voice lowered. "The third shows your truth." Aoi felt the words settle in his chest. Heavy. Uncomfortable. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. The silence stretched. Then Yanagi sipped his tea and added, "You can run from it. Many do. But if the sword is calling, it means your spirit has already drawn the blueprint. Now, the world is waiting to see if you'll finish it." That evening, Aoi didn't go to the training fields. He didn't visit Rika or check his messages. He just climbed the windwatch tower behind the dorms and sat on the railing, legs swinging over the side, eyes on the stars. The dreams were still there, just behind his eyes. That field. That name. He closed his eyes. And the voice returned. "Forge me and I will burn your burdens." A whisper low and sharp. Not menacing. Not kind. Just true. He opened his eyes slowly. And saw Luna standing beside him, hands in her coat pockets. "How long have you been there?" "Long enough," she said. He didn't ask how much she'd heard. She didn't offer. Instead, she sat beside him and said, "You've got that look again." "What look?" "The one you get before you do something reckless." He chuckled, then fell quiet. "Have you ever felt like something inside you is waiting to be finished?" Luna nodded once. "Every day," she said. Aoi turned to her, surprised. But she didn't elaborate. Instead, she asked, "You going to follow it?" "I don't know." "Then you already are." He exhaled. And for the first time that day, the pressure in his chest eased slightly. Not gone, but shared. The next morning, Aoi requested a trial sector. Not a team one. Solo. A deep dive. A randomized dungeon trial with increased mental sync difficulty. Designed not to challenge reflexes, but to push limits. The instructors approved it without question. The simulation hall shifted. And Aoi stepped inside. The dungeon opened in silence. Ash coated the floor. Not digital ash. Not an illusion. The simulator had imported his dream. He stood in the same field. Same black sand. Same sky, gray and dim as if the sun had been extinguished long ago. Siren hovered quietly at his side. Hayate drifted like a feather on a dying wind. Aoi drew neither. Instead he walked. The dungeon didn't shift. Didn't change. It waited. And at the center of the field, just as he remembered, was the sword. Hilt buried in ash. Burnt. Blunt. Blackened. But unmistakably alive. He approached slowly. And felt the heat rise with each step. Not physical heat, but emotional pressure. Like walking toward a memory he didn't want to face. "Forge me." The whisper returned. Aoi knelt beside the blade. He didn't reach for it. He asked, "What are you?" There was no answer. Just silence. Then, his own voice from inside his head. "You already know." He reached out. Pain lanced through his palm. The moment his fingers touched the hilt, a surge of mana ripped through his spine. Images, fractured and fast, rushed behind his eyes. A burning village. A blade dropped beside a fallen mentor. A choice made in silence. A whisper that said, "I'll forget it all. Just let me keep the strength." Aoi gasped. Staggered back. But the sword followed. Not floating. Crawling. Burning the ash beneath it. He raised his hand instinctively. And Siren and Hayate pulsed at once as if trying to shield him. But the third presence didn't attack. It waited. "I am the blade you tried to leave behind. But I remember you." Aoi dropped to one knee. His vision blurred. The sword stopped inches away. He reached out again. This time there was no resistance. The moment his fingers closed around the hilt, the field vanished. He stood in the simulation chamber. Breathing hard. The blade now floated in front of him, charred, crooked, faintly humming with embers. A prompt blinked across his interface. New blade detected. Memory class, bound soul fragment. Name, unregistered. Awaiting naming protocol. Aoi stared at it. Then, quietly, spoke the name that had been whispering since the first dream. Kajitsum. The blade pulsed once. Accepted. Then it dimmed. And waited. The first thing Kajitsum did was vanish. Not fade. Not deactivate. Vanish. Aoi had barely named the blade before it flickered like a dying ember and disappeared from his hand, slipping into the shadows beneath his boots without a trace. He checked the auto core. No error. No mislink. Weapon registered. Connection stable. Status, dormant. Memory class protocol active. Caution, reactive signature, emotion-based sync pending. He stared at the message for a full minute, then muttered, emotion-based sync. What does that even mean? It meant, apparently, that Kajitsum didn't respond to commands. It responded to feelings. And not calm ones. Aoi had tried everything, battle stances, blade summons, clean mental orders. Nothing. Until he tripped during a shadow step drill, barely avoiding a mana burst trap, heart pounding. And Kajitsum surged out of the ground beneath him like a wave of smoke and teeth, intercepting the strike with a curved black slash. It hadn't been graceful. It had been visceral. That was the moment Aoi knew. This blade wasn't forged from clarity or instinct. It was forged from fear. Back in the steel garden, he trained quietly, early before sunrise. Siren floated beside him. Hayate hovered higher, weaving light circles in the morning breeze. And Kajitsum? Nowhere. Yet. He exhaled slowly, then called the routine he'd been building for a week. Formation 3, Trinity Drift. Anchor, motion, shadow. Siren moved first, taking the low guard. Hayate flared upward, sharpening the space above him. And then, nothing. Aoi stepped forward into a slow strike. A feint. A twist. A pivot. Still nothing. He pushed harder. Added a leap. A midair redirect. A mock stumble. Nothing. Frustrated, he reset again, this time picturing the spiral root creature, the echo of his own voice whispering from the dark. His fingers trembled. Kajitsum erupted from the earth. No wind-up. No flash. Just a blur of black steel trailing wisps of memory smoke, slashing through a phantom enemy only Aoi could see. He staggered back. The blade hovered near him, unsteady, pulsing in uneven rhythm. It wasn't calm. It was hungry. You can't train that one the same way, Unagi said the next day, watching Aoi spar from a stone bench nearby. Aoi deactivated the formation and turned. You've seen a sword like this before? Unagi took a long sip of tea. Then said, once. He didn't elaborate. So Aoi waited. Unagi finally sighed. There are swords that listen. Swords that grow. Even swords that teach. But memory blades. He looked at Aoi. They remember too much. Especially the things their wielders forget. I didn't choose to forget, Aoi said. No, Unagi replied. But you probably needed to. A beat of silence. Then Aoi asked quietly, so what do I do now? You train it anyway, Unagi said, standing slowly. Even if it fights you. Even if it feels wrong. Because if a sword dreams, if it remembers, it means something inside you still wants to be whole. That evening, Aoi didn't practice stances. He didn't run drills or spar with projection golems. Instead, he walked to the eastern overlook, where the cliffs hung high over the sea of clouds. He sat down at the edge, laid Siren beside him, let Hayate drift above, and then whispered, Kajitsum. The blade didn't appear, but the shadows beneath his feet thickened slightly. I don't know what I'm supposed to be to you, he said. I didn't forge you from clarity or growth. I forged you from pain I don't even understand. No answer. I'm not afraid of you, he added. Silence. But I'm afraid of what you know. The shadows moved, slow, coiling. And Kajitsum rose, not with force but hesitation. The blade hovered just in front of him. Its edge was imperfect, burnt near the hilt, jagged in parts. It didn't gleam. He murmured. And Aoi understood something. This sword wasn't made for clean victories. It was made for the ugly ones. The ones you survive, but never forget. He reached out, touched the flat of the blade with 2 fingers, and felt a vision bloom behind his eyes. A boy. A shattered spell. A hallway filled with smoke. A choice made in a moment of silence, followed by years of forgetting. Kajitsum pulsed. Aoi pulled back. The blade vanished. That night he dreamed again. But this time it wasn't a sword in ash. It was a battlefield. He stood alone. Siren broken. Hayate drifting, fractured. And Kajitsum in his hand, dark, flickering but alive. A voice echoed, his own but older. Tired. You can't hold back forever. Someday you'll have to bleed for real. He woke before sunrise. Sweat on his brow. But no fear in his chest. Just a sword-shaped void at his side. Waiting to be drawn. The school announcement came just after dawn. A pale blue sigil pulsed across every interface crystal, every screen, every projection panel, casting its glow through classrooms, training fields, and dormitories alike. Skypath Advanced Trial 2 Cross-Institution Integration Mission. Location: Adaptive Dungeon Core, The Mirror Descent. Participants: 200, Mixed Cohort, Skydome, Archeon, Cloudspire. Duration: 72 hours. Mode: Partner Deep Dive. Pairings assigned. Start time: 36 hours. Aoi stared at the projection in the Commons Hall, unmoving. Around him, students buzzed with energy, some excited, some panicked, most confused. Rika appeared at his side, her scarf crooked from sleep. "Let me guess," she said. "We don't get to pick our partners?" "Nope." She groaned. "Please tell me I didn't get matched with Kale." "You like Kale?" "I like Kale better when we're not nearly dying together." Aoi smiled faintly. Then his crystal chimed. "Partner assignment. Aoi Takahashi, Elira Voss." He blinked. Twice. "Wait, Elira," he muttered. Rika leaned over. "Wait, Elira Voss? The Stormrider rep? From the university board." Aoi nodded slowly. Rika whistled. "Well, you got the wild card." Across the academy in the instructor's chamber, Unagi reviewed the pairing data silently. Beside him stood Principal Reika, arms folded, expression unreadable. "You really let them assign Voss?" Unagi asked. "I didn't stop them. She's not a student." "She used to be," Reika said. "She requested active field re-evaluation. She wants to walk the path again just once." Unagi grunted. "She's dangerous." "She's interested," Reika replied. "And Aoi is something none of us understand yet. If anyone can map his rhythm, it's her." Unagi took a long breath. Then whispered, "Or break it." 36 hours passed quickly. Aoi spent them in silence. Not fear. Not anticipation. Just focus. He trained with all three blades, Sirin, Hayate, Kajitsum. And though Kajitsum still appeared only when it wanted to, it now hovered longer. Responded faster. It pulsed not just with his fear, but his resolve. It was changing. And so was he. At departure time, students lined the eastern air yard. Floating transports buzzed in from all directions. Some from rival academies, some bearing the crests of elite dungeons, others unmarked and sealed with silver runes. The chosen participants, 200 in all, stood in 10-unit clusters, awaiting gate activation. Aoi stood alone near the edge of Platform C. Elira appeared a few minutes before the final call. She wore travel gear this time. Sleek, minimal. Her silver-threaded jacket was gone, replaced with stormweave armor that shifted colors in the wind. A curved sword hung at her back, old, worn, but dangerous in the way a calm sea can hide a whirlpool. "You showed," she said. "I could say the same." Elira looked him over once. "You've grown since Stone Vault." "I've been trying." "Good," she said. "You'll need it." She gestured toward the rising gate sigil in the center of the platform. The dungeon's called the Mirror Descent. Designed by one of the Precollapse architects. It doesn't have monsters. It has reflections. Aoi frowned. "Reflections." "It adapts," she said. "Not to your skill. To yourself. It shows you things. Tests how you handle them. Some walk through with ease. Others never come out." "Sounds lovely." "It's worse," she said, "because it remembers you long after you leave." The gate opened. A swirl of white-blue mist expanded into a glowing doorway, weightless, pulsing with slow, liquid motion. Aoi felt Hayate stir behind him. Kajitsum didn't appear, but the shadows at his feet rippled faintly. Sirin pulsed once, steady. He stepped forward. Elira followed without hesitation. The gate swallowed them. The descent was not gentle. They didn't fall. They sank. Downward through layers of light and sound, like drifting through thoughts not their own. Sometimes the sky turned red. Sometimes it flickered like glass. Sometimes it blinked. Then, stillness. The moment Aoi opened his eyes, he knew something was wrong. The dungeon didn't look like a ruin. It looked like Kesharim. Not a copy. The actual school. Or, a version of it. Except the halls were empty. The lights flickered. And the mana currents hummed in a lower pitch. "Mirror environment," Elira said, walking beside him. "It mimics places you feel safe in. Then removes the parts that make them feel safe." "Wonderful." Don't get attached to what you see. They moved cautiously through the outer corridor. No enemies. No traps. Just echoes. Once, Aoi saw a version of Rika walking down the hall ahead of him. She turned to wave, then melted into static. Another time he passed a door labeled Class 1C. His old homeroom. It was filled with ash. Alira stayed quiet through it all. Not cold. Just focused. Then the mirror pulse hit. The air rippled. The hallway twisted. And they were no longer walking side by side. Aoi stood alone. Surrounded by reflections of himself. Dozens of them. Each one holding a version of Siren. Hey, Kajitsum. Each one, different. One wore armor. One was missing an arm. One looked far too old. One looked barely 12. And they all stared at him. None moved. Then, one stepped forward. Not with hostility. With recognition. You're the one who left the gate open, it said. Aoi's breath caught. What? You left before the seal was ready. You rushed the spiral route trial. That's why I got stuck. Its voice wavered. I remember dying. Aoi staggered back. Then Alira's voice cut through the mist like a blade. Don't listen. Aoi turned. She stood at the far end of the corridor, eyes locked on him. Keep walking. But they're not real. They're versions. The dungeon's feeding them lines from your subconscious. Testing your anchor. He looked back. The copies had stopped moving. One was crying. One was laughing. One mouthed, "You forgot me." He clenched his fists. Siren pulsed. Haid hovered behind. Kajitsum appeared, low coiled. He exhaled slowly, then walked forward. Right through them. And they vanished. Later, when they reached the first rest point, Alira finally spoke. You're stronger than I expected. I'm more tired than I expected, Aoi replied. She smiled faintly, then grew serious. This dungeon's not about clearing levels. It's about holding on to yourself long enough to reach the bottom. And then what? Then we find out, she said. Aoi didn't remember walking through the door. One moment, he and Alira stood at the rest platform, cool light filtering through empty windows. The next, he was sitting in a chair. At a desk. A school desk. Alone. No sound. No wind. No exit. Just a quiet room, perfectly clean, the air still like a held breath. The chalkboard read, "Answer to exit." On the desk in front of him sat a single sheet of paper. One line. Who are you? Aoi stared at the page. Then looked around the room. There were no doors. No sigils. No mirrors. Just blank walls and 20 identical desks, all empty. The question didn't change. He reached for the pen. And stopped. Because he didn't remember where he'd been just before this. He blinked. Focused. Yes, he remembered being here. And he remembered Rika's voice? The sword? But the images blurred. Like fog behind his eyes. The pen wobbled in his grip. He lowered it again. In another room, a mirrored one, Alira stood in front of her own sheet. Urs said, "What do you regret?" She exhaled. Didn't move. Didn't answer. Her sword hovered behind her, flickering faintly. She didn't speak out loud. But her eyes stayed locked on the page for a long, long time. Meanwhile, in Aoi's room, minutes stretched like hours. The silence pressed against his ribs. He tapped the desk. Tried to speak. Oh, Aoi. The name echoed. No response. He looked down again. The page now read, "Who were you?" His chest tightened. That wasn't the original question. He didn't remember writing anything. He stood suddenly, knocking over the chair. No change. The room didn't respond. The paper didn't react. He turned to summon his swords, just for safety. Siren did not appear. Hay did not stir. Kajitsum didn't even whisper. He felt hollow. Unarmed. Across the boundary veil, in the true dungeon lair, Alira opened her eyes sharply. The separation protocol is too aggressive, she muttered. Her crystal blinked. A reading appeared. Partner cognitive sync, 27%. Name retention, failing. Sword link, disconnected. Core ID drift, plus 3%/min. She cursed under her breath. Aoi, remember yourself. In the white classroom, Aoi sat back down. He looked at his hands. They were shaking slightly. He didn't know why. His name, what was it again? Something with an A? Or was that someone else? No. He knew this feeling. He knew it deep. He had a brother. Didn't he? Or was that? His fingers gripped the edge of the desk. The paper in front of him had changed again. Who do you want to be? Something flared in his chest. A voice. Not loud. Not clear. But real. Even if you fly high, Remember where the wind came from. The word struck him like thunder. And suddenly, clarity. His brother. The letter. The duel. The blades. The forge. The whispering sword in the field of ash. I'm Aoi Takahashi, he said. His voice didn't echo. But it landed. The paper lit up, burned itself away in a silent, golden shimmer. The desk vanished. And the white room collapsed inward like mist dispersing. Aoi dropped to one knee on cold stone. Real stone. The dungeon's true floor. Elira was beside him in an instant, steadying his shoulder. Welcome back, she said. He coughed, blinking hard. How long? Long enough. He looked around. The white walls were gone. Now they stood in a circular stone chamber, dimly lit with amber mana veins pulsing through the walls. A single door stood ahead. Elira handed him a flask of focused saltwater. The mirror descent attacks differently each layer. This one dislocates memory by separating you from your anchor. It asked me who I was. That's one of the nicer questions. He took a long breath. Hayate floated back into view slowly. Then Siren shimmered in near his hip. Kajitsum didn't appear, but he felt it stir somewhere nearby. He was whole again. Mostly. When they reached the next checkpoint, Elira didn't speak for a long while. Finally she said, when I was your age, the dungeon asked me the same question. Did you answer it? No, she said. I couldn't. I had too many voices inside. Too many names I wanted to be. So I failed the layer. Aoi looked at her. You passed it now. Barely, she said. Even now, I'm still not sure which answer is true. Aoi looked down at his hand. Then at the swords floating behind him. I think the answer changes. Elira smiled just barely. Maybe that's what surviving this place means. That night, in the safe zone below Layer 1, Aoi sat by a false fire rune and whispered to Kajitsum. You heard it too, didn't you? He asked softly. The room. The question. No answer. Then. A faint tremor in the shadow beside him. Kajitsum didn't appear fully. But a single phrase etched itself into the dirt at his feet. You answered what I couldn't. Aoi closed his eyes. And slept without dreams. The sky above them wasn't real. That was the first thing Aoi noticed as they entered Layer 2. It looked like a sky, soft clouds drifting across a deep blue, light warmth on the skin, even a gentle breeze brushing through the wide grass field. But it felt artificial. Not illusion. Reconstructed. Like a memory someone else had put together from pieces they didn't fully understand. He and Elira walked slowly across the open plain. There were no monsters. No threats. Only the strange sensation that this world had been stitched together wrong. You feel that? Aoi asked. Elira nodded. It's a false positive. The environment's feeding us safety cues. Why? So we'll relax, she said. Drop our guard. Aoi's eyes narrowed. And then? Then it starts taking things. They crossed the first third of the layer without incident. Then the sky shattered. Not all at once. Just a crack, high above, barely visible at first. A thin fracture like a spiderweb creeping across glass. Aoi stopped. Elira. I see it. The crack grew with each step forward. Then a wind swept through the field, no longer gentle. It hissed. And suddenly the sky fell upward. They stood in the same place. But the world had inverted. Now the field was above them. And below them was glass. A floor made of perfectly clear crystal. Beneath it scenes. Moving. Changing. Shifting like memories playing out on loop. Aoi dropped to one knee, peering down. He saw a younger version of himself. Sitting beside a hospital bed. His mother asleep. A younger Rin curled up in the corner with a blanket wrapped around him. I remember this, Aoi said softly. The dungeon is mining you, Elira said. We're in a full echoskim layer now. Memory class. If you stare too long, it'll try to rewrite what you know. She placed a hand on his shoulder. Don't trust everything you see. But he couldn't look away. The next memory shifted. Aoi, maybe 13, standing in front of an instructor. A shattered practice sword in his hand. Tears in his eyes. You failed the sync again, the instructor said. That makes 6. I can try again. You don't have the instinct, Takahashi. Your soul's not sharp enough. The scene faded. Aoi exhaled slowly. That never happened. No, Elira said, but you believed it once. The dungeon only pulls what you let linger. They kept walking. The field above shimmered and glitched. Pieces of sky vanished, replaced by darkness. A flicker passed over the glass floor, black fog slithering beneath the surface. Aoi's sword stirred in response. Siren hovered lower. Height flared wide, searching. Kajitsum did not move. Aoi whispered, "You're holding something back." No answer. Not even a pulse. Alira glanced over. "It's watching the mirrors." "What mirrors?" She pointed down. The glass no longer showed memories. Now it showed reflections. But not theirs. People. Swordsmen. Mages. Students. Versions of Aoi. Some were wounded. Some corrupted. Some victorious beyond recognition. One had no eyes. One held a blade made of smoke. Another stood surrounded by flames, smiling with someone else's face. "These are alternate paths," Alira said. "Possibilities. Not predictions. Not truths. Just fragments." Aoi stepped closer. And one of the reflections turned its head to look up at him. His breath caught. "Did you see that?" "I did. It moved." "They all do," Alira said quietly. "Eventually." Then the fog rose. Without sound. Without warning. Just an upward swell, like water filling a tank. And the glass beneath them broke. They fell. Through layers of flickering light. Aoi reached for Height, but the blade wouldn't respond. Neither would Siren. Kajitsum stirred just once. Then all three vanished. He hit the ground hard. Darkness. Silence. Then he opened his eyes. He stood on a train platform. Empty. Familiar. A vending machine blinked softly in the corner. A breeze stirred his hair. He turned and saw himself, sitting on a bench. Same age. Same jacket. Same everything. But the other Aoi looked tired. Tired in a way bone deep. The other Aoi looked up and said, "You shouldn't have taken the sword." In another chamber, the real dungeon, Alira dropped to one knee, wincing. Partner status, isolated. Core link, severed. Warning, memory layer depth 3 detected. Unauthorized depth level breach. Extraction not possible until sync stabilizes. She clenched her fists. "Damn it, Aoi, don't go too far in." Inside the memory chamber, Aoi stared at his double. "You're not real." The other Aoi smiled sadly. "I'm what you left behind when you chose strength over peace. I'm the version of you that walked away. That never forged Kajitsum. That blade saved my life. It cost you everything else." "I don't believe that." "Then look," the reflection said, gesturing. The train platform shimmered, transformed into a dining table. A family. Paul. Smiling. His father still working. His mother humming. Rin showing off a paper spell rune. And himself, with no swords. No edge to his voice. No darkness in his hands. "I don't understand," Aoi whispered. "You could have had this. I wanted this. You chose something else." Aoi stepped back. "No." He clenched his fists. "I didn't choose swords over family. I chose swords for them." The double stood. And suddenly, it had Kajitsum in its hand. Not the real one. A cracked, red-eyed mockery. Pulsed, sharp, hungry, wrong. Aoi summoned his real blade. Kajitsum rose. Slow. Heavy. But true. They stood, mirror and reflection. And clashed. The false sword struck first, fast, wild, whispering. Aoi parried once. Twice. Staggered on the third. The false Aoi smiled. "You're still afraid." "I'm allowed to be." The false sword rose again. Aoi caught it, barely, then twisted and drove his blade down. Not into the reflection, but the ground. And said loud and clear, "I remember who I am." The world shattered. Aoi dropped to his knees on the dungeon floor, sweating, breathing hard. His hand still gripped Kajitsum. But the blade was calm now. No more tremble. No more smoke. Just a steady pulse. A whisper this time, not of fear. "Welcome back." Alira helped him up. "You passed the memory layer," she said quietly. "Did I?" "You did something most can't," she replied. "You faced the you that doubts everything." He looked at Kajitsum. And whispered, "I know what you are now." The air in layer 3 was heavier than the last. Not because of pressure. Because of weight. Every step Aoi took left a small echo behind, not sound but a sensation. Like dragging invisible threads with his boots, and the longer he walked, the more the weight clung to his back. Alira walked beside him, slower than usual. "This layer's different," she muttered. "The mirror descent calls it the trial of dual burdens." Aoi glanced at her. "That name doesn't inspire confidence." "It shouldn't. This is where most duos fracture. Not from distrust. From exhaustion." They reached a fork in the corridor. 2 hallways. Identical. One left, one right. A sign hovered in the air between them. One may carry the burden of memory. One may carry the burden of pain. Choose. Aoi read it twice, then turned to Alira. You think it's metaphor? No, she said flatly. It's always literal. He hesitated, then said, I'll take pain. Alira frowned. Sure? Yeah. She gave him a long look, and nodded. They split. He took the right. She took the left. The moment Aoi stepped past the threshold, something hit him. A wave of force, blunt and hot, that seared down his spine. Not damage. Not injury. Simulated agony. Like old wounds being opened one by one. His knees buckled. He fell to the floor, gasping. Pain laced his arms, his ribs, his legs. His auto core didn't respond. It recognized the damage, but couldn't correct it. Trial modifier, healing locked. Duration, unknown. Aoi grit his teeth. Okay, this is fine. He crawled to a kneeling position, then forced himself to stand. Each step forward felt like walking through fire. Kajitsum whispered faintly in his mind. Let me help. No, he murmured. Not yet. Meanwhile, in her corridor, Alira felt nothing. No traps. No pain. No obstacles. Just drifting thoughts. At first it seemed like a relief, but after a few minutes she began hearing things. Whispers. Not from outside. From within. Memories she hadn't invited. You left them behind. You promised you'd return. How many more lives until your debt feels paid? She pressed her fingers to her temple. Not real, she whispered. Just echoes. The corridor darkened slightly. A voice she hadn't heard in years spoke, soft, broken. You said I mattered more than the mission. Alira froze, then moved on. Faster. Aoi staggered through his corridor, one arm gripping his side. His muscles ached. His vision blurred. And yet he kept walking. Every few meters a projection flared. Scenes. Each one a moment of pain. His brother shivering on the floor after the heating crystal ran out. His mother crying quietly over a medical bill. His father lying about a second job. Every image burned. But he didn't look away. Because they were real. They were why he fought. He reached the end of the hall and slammed his palm against the rune-locked door. A message blinked into view. Burden accepted. Partner's path complete. Merging in progress. The two paths merged. Alira stood at the edge of a circular chamber, arms folded. Aoi stumbled in moments later, pale and shaking, but awake. She rushed to his side. He waved her off. I'm fine. You're not. Still standing, aren't I? Alira looked at him for a long moment. Then whispered, I should have taken that path. You couldn't, Aoi said. Your trial wasn't pain. It was memory. Her jaw tightened. You saw them? He nodded. Silence. Then a voice echoed through the chamber. Now exchange your burdens. Another corridor opened ahead. Aoi looked to Alira, then stepped forward. And without hesitation, he took her hand. For a moment, the pain and memory both surged, like a wave crashing over them. Aoi saw her memories. A tower collapsing. A student calling her name. A promise broken. Alira saw his. The letters. The forge. The weight of guilt carried in silence. Then, it passed. And the room settled. Burden shared. Proceed. The next floor was quiet. Alira handed him water. He took it. His hand still shook slightly. She sat beside him, eyes on the dim hallway ahead. You didn't have to do that, she said. I know. You'll be slower now. I'll manage. Alira looked at him, then back at the path. No one carried my pain before. Aoi didn't answer. Just stared down at his hands. Then whispered. No one should have to carry it alone. The chamber was too quiet. That was the first thing Aoi noticed as they stepped into Layer 4's core. No ambient wind. No hum of mana. Just silence. And breath. Their own. It echoed softly, too softly, across the wide circular chamber that pulsed faintly with crimson light. The walls weren't stone this time. They were flesh. Not bleeding. Not grotesque. But alive. A subtle, steady rhythm pulsed through the floor beneath their boots. Bottom. Bottom. The heartbeat of the dungeon itself. Alira's hand hovered near the hilt of her sword. Layer 4, she said. This one has a guardian. Aoi raised an eyebrow. You've been here before? No, she said. But I've read the files. This is the trial they never opened to full public records. Only 4 teams on record ever made it this far. And? None of them described what they saw. Just said it wasn't an enemy you could kill the normal way. Aoi exhaled slowly. I'm guessing that means it knows our names. Probably better than we do. The center of the chamber glowed faintly. A low platform rose up, smooth and glass-like. Upon it sat a figure. Human-shaped. Face down. Unmoving. Its chest pulsed with the same rhythm as the floor. Bottom, like it was synced to the dungeon's lifeblood. Alira drew her sword. Aoi reached for Siren. But before either moved, the figure spoke. You brought your burdens all the way here. Its voice wasn't loud, but it filled the space like fog. The figure rose slowly, back straight, face still shadowed. As it stepped into the light, Aoi froze, because he recognized it. Not the face, the presence. That's not a person, Kajitsum whispered inside him. That's what you left behind. The figure looked at Aoi. Eyes black. Not cruel. Not angry. Just full. Of weight. Of things unsaid. I am the accumulation, it said. I am the guilt you softened to survive. I am the fear you turned into resolve. I am the sorrow you trained into silence. Aoi didn't respond. The figure took another step. You've carried so much, but not all of it. Some you hid. Some you forgot. And now, it held out its hand. Now you must take it back. Aoi stepped forward. His hand shook, but his voice was calm. I'll take it. The figure tilted its head. Then show me you can carry it. The room flared. Suddenly there were 3 of them. 3 versions of Aoi, standing at the chamber's edge. Each holding one sword. Siren. Hey. Kajitsum. The real Aoi stood weaponless. The guardian raised a hand. Face what you forged. Siren. Aoi moved first. Graceful. Come. Each step measured. He struck with the weight of clarity. Aoi dodged left, barely avoiding a clean slash. His body moved on instinct, muscle memory guiding him even without a blade. But Siren Aoi wasn't just imitating. He was perfecting. Don't treat them like illusions. Alira shouted from the edge. They're true reflections. They carry your discipline, your speed, your darkness, everything you poured into the blades. Aoi gritted his teeth. Hayatoi flickered in next. Fast. Too fast. He struck from above, below, behind, wind rushing with each flash of motion. Aoi stumbled, parried with bare arms, slipped and rolled, scraping against the pulsing floor. His core throbbed with effort. Kajitsum Aoi didn't move. Just stood watching. Waiting. And that terrified Aoi the most. Then Siren Aoi stopped, raised the blade, and said, You never forgave yourself. Aoi flinched. Hayata followed. You run fast, but not fast enough to leave regret behind. Then Kajitsum Aoi stepped forward. Eyes blank. Voice soft. But I remember all of it. He raised his sword. The real Kajitsum pulsed at Aoi's back, awakening without being summoned. Let me answer. Aoi whispered, then fight beside me. The shadows surged. The true Kajitsum formed in his hand, cold, quiet, steady. Not hungry. Not broken. Just real. The moment it touched his palm, the battlefield stilled. Then, Aoi lunged forward. Straight at Kajitsum Aoi. Their blades clashed, not with noise but with silence. Memory against memory. Echo against echo. Each strike released flashes of things Aoi had tried to forget. His failures. His doubts. The nights he almost quit. But this time he didn't falter. He didn't dodge them. He let them pass through him. And with each memory, Kajitsum in his hand grew warmer, brighter. And when he struck the final blow, it wasn't to destroy the copy. It was to embrace it. The reflections dissolved. The chamber dimmed. And the guardian, the burdened figure, stepped forward. Its face now clear. Not monstrous. Not alien. Just tired. You carried more than most. I'm not the only one, Aoi said. The figure nodded. Then turned to Alira. You came back. Alira stiffened. Aoi looked at her. The guardian was speaking, in a different voice now. Not to him. To her. Alira, it said softly. You left me. But you never really let me go. Her hand trembled. Vayan, she whispered. Aoi didn't speak. Didn't ask. The guardian smiled gently. I don't hate you, it said. I just wanted you to know that your burden was never yours alone. Then it faded. Light filled the chamber. Layer 4, complete. Trial accepted. Burden balanced. Proceed. They didn't speak for a long time after. Aoi sat with his swords at his side, breathing slowly. Alira stood near the wall, hand pressed to her temple. Finally Aoi said, Was that someone you knew? She nodded. He didn't press. But quietly he said, "He forgave you." Elira whispered, "That's what made it harder." The floor cracked the moment they stepped onto it. Not beneath their feet but above. The sky inside layer 5 wasn't glass. It was mirror, a ceiling stretched wide with 1,000 fractured reflections. Some shimmered. Some moved. Some screamed without sound. Aoi felt it before he saw it. A tug behind his ribs. Not danger. Separation. He reached for Siren. The sword didn't answer. He turned. Elira was already fading, like mist parting around her figure. Wait. Her hand reached back, but it was too late. The space between them rippled, and the dungeon swallowed them both. He landed hard. Dust rose around him, soft ash-gray particles that clung to his boots and lungs. The room. Enclosed. Cold. Silent. Walls lined with mirrors. None showed his reflection. Aoi coughed once, braced his knees, and tried to summon his blades. Siren. Hey. Kajitsum. Nothing. No pulse. No hum. No sound. Even the auto core in his chest gave no feedback. Weapon sync. Blocked. Trial mode. Reflection lock. Condition. No sword. No partner. No escape. He exhaled. Okay, he muttered. You want to test me without my blades? He stood slowly. Fine. The mirrors flickered. And one cracked. From the fracture stepped a figure. Not a monster. Not a shadow. A boy. Small. 12, maybe 13. Wearing the same uniform Aoi had once worn, before the sky path, before the dungeon trials, before forging Siren. He looked up, and Aoi realized, he wasn't a stranger. He was the Aoi who never awakened. You think you're strong because of your swords? The boy said. His voice trembled, but not with fear. With disappointment. You think you've grown. But every step you took was on someone else's blade. Aoi stayed quiet. You didn't carry yourself forward, the boy continued. You were pulled. He pointed. To the power you were given. To the teachers who noticed. To the people who followed. You're just the result of accidents. Aoi clenched his fists, but said nothing. The boy stepped closer. And now, without your swords, you're just still standing. Aoi's voice was quiet, but the words landed like thunder. He walked forward. Slow. Steady. I trained, he said. I broke. I got up. Again and again. The boy faltered. You're right. I had help. I had luck. I had moments I didn't earn. But you know what else I had? He stepped closer. I had to carry it after. I had to wake up the next day and still walk toward a future that never promised me anything. The mirror behind the boy cracked. Aoi stared into the webbed glass. I'm not here because I was chosen, he whispered. I'm here because I kept choosing. The boy looked down, then faded. The walls around him shifted. Now a single mirror stood ahead. Large, silver-edged, no cracks. He approached it slowly. And this time, his reflection was there. Oh, older. Wearing the same uniform he had now. No swords. Just himself. The reflection smiled faintly. Then held out its hand. You're ready now. A pulse echoed through the room. And Aoi felt it. Siren awakening in his right hand. Hei swirling into form at his side. Kajitsum blooming from the shadow beneath his feet. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He just exhaled. And whispered, thank you. The mirror shattered. Light poured through the cracks. And Aoi rose with it. Back into the true chamber, where Elira stood, blade drawn, facing down a mirror-wrought beast. It hissed as he appeared, recoiling in shock. Aoi didn't hesitate. He moved. Not with anger. With knowing. Siren struck first, a clean arc that staggered the creature. Hayate followed, dancing through the broken air like wind set free. Kajitsum struck last, cutting through its voice, not its body. And the beast dissolved without a scream. Elira turned breathless. You all right? She asked. He nodded. You? Still standing. They moved quickly after that. Layer 5's exit waited in the chamber's core. No traps, no resistance. Just a gate. Glowing silver. Elira placed her hand on it first. It took your swords, she said. For a little while. But not your will. Aoi glanced at his blades. Then back at her. You know what I realized in there? What? I'm not a swordsman because I hold blades. He stepped through the gate. I'm a swordsman because I keep walking when they're gone. The path beneath layer 5 wasn't lit by mana lines. It was carved by memory. Literal memory. As Aoi and Elira descended the narrow spiral corridor, the walls shimmered with faint impressions. moments frozen into stone like sediment pressed by time. Voices, laughter, fragments of battles. Footsteps on paths that no longer existed. Alira touched the wall once, pulled her hand back fast. It's warm. Aoi didn't ask. He could feel it too. The air buzzed faintly, like standing near a memory that hadn't happened yet. Kajitsum pulsed quietly at his side, not aggressive, just aware. Siren and Hayate floated behind him in perfect sync. They weren't being summoned. They were choosing to follow. The staircase opened into a wide antechamber. Dark, empty, except for a single metal door. It stood at the far end, sealed with 5 locking rings and 1 rune in the center. A name, written in script that shimmered silver blue. Aoi stepped closer. Alira came to his side. They read the name together, and both froze. Takahashi Aoi. It's your name, Alira said. Aoi didn't speak. The breath caught in his throat. He reached forward slowly. His fingers brushed the rune, and the world shuddered. A vision. Not a memory. A recording. Projected not on screens but in sensation. They stood in a different room now. Same stone, same door, but brighter. Cleaner. 2 figures spoke in hushed voices. A woman in a white cloak. A boy, 15 maybe, bound to a forged circle. Alira gasped. It was Aoi. Younger. Paler. Eyes closed. A rune carved into the skin above his heart. The woman spoke. To preserve the potential, we must seal the emotional weight. Core Protocol, A03. Memory lock. Sword path initiated. He won't remember this, said another voice. He'll awaken thinking the power is new. It has to feel earned or it won't root properly. The image blurred. Aoi dropped to one knee. That was me. Alira knelt beside him. This place isn't just part of the mirror descent, she whispered. It's the place you were reset. Kajitsum appeared without being summoned. Fully. Its shadow rose up into a spiral shape behind Aoi, and it spoke. Not aloud, but in his mind. This is where I was born. Not from fear. From you. From the part they tried to lock away. Aoi gritted his teeth. He remembered now. Fragments. Enough. The training room. The experiment. The sword that didn't respond until he gave it something real. Not skill, not mana, but sorrow. He touched the door again. This time it opened. Inside was a single room. Circular. Empty. Except for one thing. A mirror. No glass. No silver. Just smooth obsidian stone, polished to reflect nothing. Alira stepped in behind him. This is where they stored it, she said. The version of you they erased. Aoi walked to the center. The mirror pulsed once. Kajitsum hummed quietly. And his reflection appeared. Not him now. Not him then. But the Aoi who chose to forget. You asked me to hide it, the reflection said. To lock the door. To throw away the key. But you kept walking. You kept forging. And now you're ready. Aoi didn't speak. He just stepped forward. And touched the mirror. Light. Silence. Then warmth. A rush of all the things he hadn't let himself feel in years. The helplessness when Rin got sick and he couldn't afford the cure. The anger when his application was rejected again. The pain of forging Siren alone, bleeding into the steel because he had no one else. The moment he first whispered his brother's name into a blade. Let him be safe. Let him be strong if I cannot be. And then, acceptance. The reflection stepped back, smiled, and vanished. The mirror became a doorway. The dungeon acknowledged the moment. Core room access granted. Memory integration complete. Trial of the true name, unlocked. They stepped into the final chamber together. Alira looked at him as the lights began to rise. You okay? Aoi nodded once. No more missing pieces. She smiled faintly. Good. You'll need all of you for what's next. The floor ahead pulsed softly. A name etched into it. Not always. Not Alira's. Just one word. Vayan. Alira stopped cold. Her breath caught. And for the first time in years, her hands shook. Aoi reached out. Took her wrist. I'll walk this part with you, he said quietly. And together they moved forward. The room wasn't stone. It was metal. Polished, ancient, humming with power too smooth to be modern. The walls curved inward like the inside of a shell, lined with glowing lines of light, not mana veins but circuits. Beneath their feet, the floor shifted with every step, adapting to pressure, temperature, breath. Aoi stepped lightly, every sense alert. Kajitsum floated behind him like a second shadow. Siren hovered low and tight. Hayate drifted in wide, loose spirals, scanning the room without being told. Alira walked ahead, silent. Her eyes hadn't moved from the name etched on the threshold. Van. She hadn't said a word since they crossed it. Aoi didn't press. The air here wasn't oppressive. It was sacred. They reached a central console, 3 rings surrounding a silver pedestal. On top sat a cracked glass tablet, faintly glowing. Alira touched it. It responded to her hand. User identified, Alira Voss. Authorization, archived. Reinstating access. The chamber lit up. Panels unfolded from the ceiling. Floating windows spun into orbit around the pedestal. Data began to stream across them. Images, maps, files labeled with a symbol neither Aoi nor Alira recognized. But one word appeared repeatedly. Project Skyrend. Alira swallowed. Aoi stepped beside her. You've heard of this? Only in rumors, she said quietly. Before the collapse there were experiments. Not on dungeons. On people. A file opened. A video played. The footage showed a test chamber, not unlike the one they stood in now. Students in gray robes moved through obstacle courses, their eyes distant, their movements unnatural. Not because they were slow. Because they were too perfect. Every action calculated. Every movement silent. One by one they summoned swords without speaking. Not conjured. Not forged. They were fused to their cores. The swords floated like thoughts. Responded like instincts. And in the corner of the feed a file name blinked. Subject V01, Van. Alira's breath caught. The camera zoomed in on one boy. White hair. Dark eyes. No emotion. He didn't smile. Didn't blink. He moved like wind, but not free. Just fast. A tool in human shape. The feed cut. And another file opened on its own. Final log, Subject V01. Termination requested. Cognitive divergence exceeded acceptable limits. Subject retains emotional memory. Displays behavior inconsistent with standard sync protocols. Refused to engage in conflict. Requested release. Quote, I don't want to be a sword anymore. Status isolated. Still. Memory lock applied. Location, mirror descent, core depth. Silence. Aoi looked at Alira. Her eyes stayed locked on the screen. I knew him, she said quietly. I thought he was gone. The pedestal glowed again. A new prompt appeared. Trial of the true name. Begin? Alira didn't move. Aoi placed his hand beside hers. I'll face it with you, he said. She nodded. And activated the trial. The floor dropped. Not fell. Shifted. Like a shell unfolding, the entire chamber peeled back. Layers spinning open to reveal a core chamber far below, lit by a soft, sky-blue light that shouldn't exist this deep underground. They landed gently. In the center of the chamber stood a single figure. He wasn't bound. Wasn't hostile. Just standing. Waiting. White hair. Gray robe. Barefoot. Eyes closed. And beside him, hovering without motion, was a blade like nothing Aoi had ever seen. It wasn't metal. It was wind. Formless, barely visible, shimmering with translucent pressure. Alira stepped forward. Van? The boy opened his eyes. And smiled. Alira, he said softly. You remembered. The silence that followed was the kind that cracked hearts. He looked exactly as he had in the video. Not older. Not changed. Not decayed. Just preserved. Trapped in time. And smiling like someone who still remembered what it meant to love the wind. You came back, he said. I promised, Alira whispered. You were late, he teased. I had to live. He nodded. Good. Then looked at Aoi. You carry 3 swords, he said. But you haven't finished becoming one yet. Aoi stiffened. You can see that? Van nodded once. I was almost what you are, he said. But they stopped me before I chose. Alira stepped forward again. We're here to get you out. You can't, Van said. The wind around his body shifted. There's a part of me that wants to stay. That still believes being a sword is better than being a person. Pause. Then. So if you want to set me free, you'll have to prove you're not just the same mistake again. The wind in the chamber shifted, not wild, not violent, just awake. Van stood at the center, his wind blade floating inches above his palm, pulsing with soft, clear rhythm. It made no noise, cast no shadow. And yet, Aoi felt every movement like a shift in gravity. He didn't draw siren, didn't call Hade, didn't even summon Kajitsum. He stepped forward with nothing in his hands. I'm not here to fight, Aoi said calmly. Van tilted his head, not unkind. Then you're already losing. Behind them, Elira stood near the edge of the core ring, hands clenched, eyes fixed. This wasn't just a trial. It was a conversation. A final one. Between the boy who once chose not to fight, and the one who learned to fight without forgetting why. Vayan moved first. No signal. No stance. Just motion. The wind blade arced low, then wide, brushing past Aoi's shoulder, not to cut, but to warn. Aoi didn't flinch. Didn't block. He stepped back, measured, patient. "You're not trying to hit me," he said. "No," Vayan replied. "I'm trying to see if you'll hit me." Aoi exhaled, and summoned Siren. Just one sword. Held low. Reverse grip. Not in aggression. In trust. "You wanted to be free," Aoi said. "I wanted to not hurt anyone," Vayan replied. "That's not the same thing." Vayan's smile faltered, and he struck again. The wind blade flickered through 4 arcs, tight, coiled, precise. Aoi blocked once, redirected once, let the 3rd pass cleanly, and stepped into the 4th. On purpose. Vayan's blade halted an inch from Aoi's chest. Not because it was slow. Because Vayan stopped it. Aoi met his eyes. "You don't want to cut." Vayan's shoulders trembled. "I was made to." "No," Aoi said. "You were told to." Silence. Aoi lowered Siren. Let it float quietly at his side. "You were told you had to become a weapon," Aoi continued. "But you knew it would break something in you." He took a slow breath. "I felt it too. The pressure to be strong. The fear of being too much. The voice that says, if you want to matter, you have to hurt people first." Vayan's wind blade pulsed harder, then wavered, flickered, dim. Elira stepped forward. "You said you didn't want to be a sword anymore," she whispered. "But you stayed." Vayan looked at her. "I stayed," he said, "because no one else knew how to leave. I thought if I stayed long enough, I could make the blade gentle." Aoi stepped beside her now. "You can," he said. "But not here." The chamber pulsed, and the wind blade, Vayan's, floated away from his hand. Not dropped. Released. For the first time in years he stood empty-handed. No weapon. Just himself. And he smiled. "I hoped," he whispered, "that someone like you would find me." Aoi reached out, and took his hand. Trial complete. Project Skyrend, final protocol unlocked. Prototype released. V01 status, human. The chamber shifted again. Not collapsed. Softened. The walls faded into pale mist, and the floor beneath their feet became solid light. A platform rose slowly beneath Vayan, cradling him like a stasis lift. Above, a sigil opened in the ceiling. A way out. One that hadn't existed before. Elira turned to Aoi. "You passed the trial." "No," he said. "We ended it." Back in the upper ring, as the light carried Vayan's platform upward, he looked down at them one last time. "You carry 3 blades," he said softly. "But one day, Aoi, you'll have to choose what kind of edge you truly are." Aoi nodded. "I already have," he said. "I'm the kind that makes space for others to stay human." The door behind them sealed with a whisper. Not a thud. Not a clang. Just a soft, final sound. Like a breath being held. Aoi stood beside Elira at the threshold of Layer 7, the deepest tier of the mirror descent. No map. No marker. No lighting. Just a hallway made of mirrored obsidian. Floor, walls, ceiling, every surface perfectly smooth and perfectly black. And they could see themselves. But only sometimes. Sometimes their reflections moved without them. Aoi placed a hand on Siren's hilt. It pulsed faintly. Hayate hovered low to the side, near silent. Kajitsum didn't appear. Not yet. Elira didn't draw her weapon either. They both understood. This wasn't a place for blades. Not yet. They walked for what felt like hours. There were no turns. No doors. No changes in the walls. Only the shifting reflections. Sometimes, Aoi saw himself alone. Sometimes he saw Elira walking beside someone else. Sometimes, the reflection showed no one at all. He didn't ask what she saw. And she didn't ask what he feared. Then a voice filled the corridor. Not from ahead. From everywhere. "Welcome to the archive." It was calm. Mechanical. But not cold. Just tired. "You are being observed. This floor records not your past but your potential. The swords you may become." They stopped walking. In front of them the hallway split. One path curved right, the other left. Both shimmered with soft blue lines pulsing like breath. A floating glyph appeared between the paths. To proceed, choose the blade you may become. Not the one you hold. Not the one you want. The one you are becoming. The message blinked, then split again. A prompt appeared beneath each path. Left, the blade that protects. Right, the blade that commands. Aoi felt it in his chest. A tug in both directions. Alira looked at him. You feel it too? Yeah. It's not asking you to choose power, she said. It's asking you to choose purpose. He nodded. What about you? He asked. She pointed straight ahead. There was no path there. But as she pointed, a third one opened, just for her. Path 3, the blade that remembers. Aoi blinked. That's yours. I think it always was, she whispered. They looked at each other. No need for speeches. Just a quiet nod. And then, they parted. Aoi stepped onto the left path. The blade that protects. Not because it felt easier, but because it felt honest. He walked in silence. Until the world around him changed. A field. What? Empty. Gray grass underfoot. Sky dim and muted. And ahead of him, 3 figures. His brother. His mother. His father. But they weren't real. He could feel it. They stood still, unmoving like carved echoes. Between them and Aoi, a corridor formed, lined with countless versions of himself. Each one holding a blade. Each one ready to strike. Then, a voice behind him. You can't protect them from everything. Aoi turned. Saw himself again. Older. Tired. Scarred. Wearing a uniform from a school that didn't exist. Ice cold. Distant. Protection has a cost, the older Aoi said. And if you're not willing to bear it, someone else will pay. Aoi looked at the corridor of clones. Then at the echo of his family. He stepped forward. Not to fight. To stand between. The copies raised their blades. Aoi didn't draw. He just stood his ground. Siren floated beside him. Hayate arced overhead. Kajitsum remained sheathed. He didn't need them. Because this trial wasn't about striking first. It was about refusing to move. The reflections struck. But each one shattered against the boundary Aoi created, not a barrier of mana or strength. A presence. The sheer clarity of purpose. Not to be the strongest. Not to be the fastest. But to be the one who stays when others fall. The trial ended with silence. No victory screen. Just warmth in his chest. Path confirmed, the blade that guards. You are becoming a sword that stands between. When he returned to the central platform, Alira was already waiting. Her expression was unreadable. But there were tears on her cheek. I saw everything I tried to forget, she whispered. And it still loved me. Aoi didn't need details. He just reached out and touched her shoulder. We're almost there, he said. A final door opened. The archive faded behind them. And in front of them rose a spiral stair made of starlight. Above it, a final prompt. The descent is complete. The sky awaits. The stairway wasn't solid. It was light. Each step shimmered under Aoi's boots, rippling like water before turning firm beneath his weight. Alira moved beside him, her cloak rustling softly with each step. Above them no sky. Just endless stars, pale, shifting, softly falling upward like slow-motion rain. Is this still the dungeon? Aoi asked quietly. Alira shook her head. No, she said. This is the exit. But it didn't feel like an end. It felt like a beginning. The top of the stair opened into open air. Literally. They stepped through the final threshold into the sky itself. Floating high above the blue planet on a suspended island of crystal and cloud. One not marked on any academy map, and definitely not part of the official training grid. Around the platform hovered silver-blue drones. Observation orbs. Spectator anchors. And in the center of the clearing stood 5 people. 2 wore robes of the Kesharim Faculty Council. 2 wore the black and white of Archeon Sky University. And the 5th, a woman in gold-threaded formal wear. Her eyes sharp. Expression unreadable. She held a silver crystal in one hand. Candidate Takahashi Aoi, she said. Candidate Alira Voss. Aoi blinked. Alira stiffened beside him. The woman stepped forward. I am Mira Solon, head chair of the Skyboard Evaluation Assembly. On behalf of the Council of Azure Academies, we welcome you back. She extended the crystal. It lit up, projecting a wide, glowing screen. On it, a live stream replay of them. Inside the mirror descent. Every floor. Every moment. Always breath caught. You were watching? We were learning, Mira corrected. Everything inside the mirror descent is recorded. Your trial was not just an evaluation of power, but of alignment. She turned slightly, gestured to the others. These institutions have seen your path, your choices, your burden, your memory, your restraint. And now, she stepped back. They would like to offer you a seat. Silence. Then the man in black robe stepped forward. Tall. Scar across one cheek. Archeon Sky University, he said. Warfare Division. We've prepared a personal training wing and hybrid swordcraft curriculum for you. You won't just fight monsters. You'll lead teams into the uncharted tiers. We'll give you access to the old Skyforge archives. You'll be legendary before you turn 20. He stepped back. Then a woman in a shimmering stormweave coat moved forward. Cloudspire Guild University, she said. We specialize in windborne tactics and partnered flight systems. You'll have your own aerial blade unit. Live missions. Dungeon skirmishes. Profit sharing. She winked. And no formal classes. Pause. Then a final voice. Quiet. Steady. From an older man in a gray robe. You could return to Kesharim, he said. As a provisional instructor. Continue learning while guiding others. You've walked the hardest path. Your insight could shape the next generation. The wind stirred gently around them. Mira Solan's voice echoed again. You don't have to choose now. But you will before the solstice trials. Alira looked at him. Not bad for a guy who didn't know what a mana sink was 4 months ago. Always smiled faintly. I'm still not sure I do. The council dispersed. Not with formality. With quiet understanding. Alira turned toward the transport dock that had lowered silently onto the edge of the floating platform. Where will you go next? Aoi asked. I have someone to visit, she said. And maybe a letter to write. A beat passed. You? He looked at the sky above them. Then at his swords. Siren hovered steady. Hate circled like wind. Kajitsum stayed quiet but warm. I need to go home, he said. Just for a little. To see your family? To remember who I'm fighting for. Alira nodded. Then reached into her coat and handed him a folded card. Just in case you want to train with someone who won't go easy on you. He took it, smiled. Then watched her board the dock. She didn't look back. But she didn't need to. Some people could share silence better than words. That evening, Aoi stood alone on the rooftop of the Kesharim dorms. Ren's message flickered across his comm crystal. You said you'd be home soon. Did you mean it? He tapped to reply. Yeah, I'll be there by dusk. And I'm bringing something new with me. A sword? No. A story. Siren pulsed quietly. Hayate circled once and folded itself into its compact form. Kajitsum stirred faintly. He could still feel the weight of the mirror descent under his feet. But now the sky felt lighter. Not because he had no burdens left, but because he'd finally learned how to carry them and keep walking. The train hummed beneath his boots, steady, warm, familiar. Not a skybound craft. Not a flight sigil. Just an ordinary magnetic rail, coasting quietly over the ridgeline toward the edge district where the buildings shrank and the air smelled faintly of coal and rain. Always sat near the window, bag at his feet. No sword on his back. All 3 blades were sealed inside, a courtesy to public safety regs, but even so he could feel them. Quiet. Listening. Outside, the world drifted by in slow-motion grays and golds. Autumn was pressing in. He watched the rooftops blur by, then let his eyes close. The station was half-lit and mostly empty when he arrived. Only 2 platforms. No security gates. Just a vending machine, a creaky turnstile, and an old man asleep under a solar lamp. It was the same as always. He took the old path home, cutting behind the glass repair shop, over the rusted service ladder, and through the alley that always smelled like soy paste and burnt copper. When he turned the corner, the apartment lights were on. One flickering. One steady. He didn't knock. Just opened the door slowly. And stepped inside. Ren? His voice was soft. But the reply came instantly. Big bro. Feet patted across the floor. And then his little brother was standing there, half his height, mop of black hair even messier than usual, eyes wide with something between disbelief and joy. You really came back. Aoi smiled, kneeling down. I said I would. Ren looked at the bag, then at Aoi. Did you bring the swords? They're sleeping. Ren giggled. Do they snore? Hate probably does. Dinner was simple. Reheated stew, warm bread, and a single pack of shelf-stable pudding Aoi had brought back from the academy shop. His mother fussed over his hair. His father asked too many questions. And Ren refused to stop talking about the time he tried to climb the fire escape like a dungeon delver. It was loud, unpolished, perfect, and for the first time in a long while, Aoi felt full. Not just fed, full. Later that night he stepped out onto the rooftop. The air was crisp, quiet. Hayate shimmered into view first, drifting in slow, lazy circles. Then Siren. Then Kajitsum. None hovered close. They just kept him company. He sat with his back to the roof vent, knees drawn up, head tilted toward the stars. I don't need a sky to fly, he whispered. Just enough room to remember why I'm climbing. Kajitsum pulsed quietly. Siren stayed steady. Hayate swirled upward once, then settled. A soft voice behind him. Hey. Barefoot, pajama-clad, clutching a steaming mug. He handed it over without a word and sat beside him. They drank in silence. Half cocoa. Half silence. Finally, Rin asked, Are you going to leave again? Aoi nodded slowly. Yeah. Soon? Maybe. Rin looked down. Aoi nudged him with a smile. But next time, he said, I'll send you messages before I fight memory-eating dungeons. Rin blinked. You what? Never mind. They laughed. Then watched the stars a little longer. Eventually, Rin fell asleep leaning on his side. Aoi stayed where he was, not moving. Because in that moment, nothing needed to be done. There were no enemies. No choices. No trials. Only quiet. Only home.